Hello. Do not adjust your streaming screens. You are having a crisis. It is I, Crisis with a K, and I am live from New Zealand, even earlier in the morning than usual because I had my daylight savings and you had yours before. So anyway, there's math, it's time zones. Ask any computer programmer. It's a hard thing to figure out. But I'm here today to talk about all the comic books that were out last week on April 2nd. And you know what? Before we get into anything else, greetings, AMA, Moment of Krisis. We are going to talk about my top 12 comic book series of the year. And there have been some shakeups, some of which you may find controversial. Oh gosh, I have to hide the thumbnails. You're gonna get spoilers. Oh no. Hide this thumbnail. Oh, we're gonna hide the thumbnails. Okay, pretend you never saw that. Are you ready? Here we go for my top comic series so far of 2025 based on my own custom algorithm. Number 12, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from IDW, written by Jason Aaron. Number 11, Batman in Detective Comics from Tom Taylor and Mikael Janin, which I really love, especially that cover. Number 10 is Ghost Box, which only has one more issue coming out on Amazon Comixology in just a couple of weeks. Then we have The Tin Can Society from Rick Remender's Giant Generator, written by Peter Warren with art from Francesco Mobili, which I love. Then we have Absolute Superman reaching back up further into the top 10. We'll be talking about that today because it came out this week. Then we have The Ultimates, of course, by Camp for Jerry and Blee. We have The Power Fantasy, one of my favorite comic books by Kieran Gillen and Casper Wingard. We have The Avengers by Jed McKay. And of course, we know it's in my top 10 because I am obsessed with Fareed Krami's art. But wait, what's this? What's this? We have a new entry, and this is the controversial one. I mentioned this OGN last week, and that I was going to read it as individual issues. It is Reversal, and we're going to talk about it more this week. Then number 3, Batman Dark Patterns. Number 2, The Nice House by the Sea. And of course, still at number 1, what other comic would it be? It is FML by Kelly Sue DeConnick. I think you should take a drink. David Lopez, Chris Peter, and Clayton Cowles. But wait, that's not all that we do at the top of the show now. No. There's more, because now I go through my picks of the week. So if you don't know, I have this website, crushingcrisis.com, and I cover all the new releases from DC, from Marvel, and from Image every week for the next week coming. And in that post, I pick what I think will be my top comic book that will be out the next week. Am I always right in my predictions? This week suggests perhaps not. So let's look at my picks of the week. Last week, when I went through all the DC new releases, I thought my pick of the week would be Secret Six. I was very enamored with the first issue. I really like how Maines wrote this character, Dreamer, of course, who she acted on television, but I really like the romantic / platonic triangle between Dreamer, John Kent, and Jay Nakamura. Was that my top choice? No, it was Birds of Prey. So I will talk about both of them later, but I was obsessed with this issue of Birds of Prey. Next, we come to Marvel. What was my Marvel pick of the week? Well, it was Deadpool, because I've been really loving Deadpool. It's been very consistent. I really like the art. I love Cody Ziegler's writing for it. Will we be saying that that is my favorite Marvel comic of the week? No, in an astounding turn of events, considering the generated praise and consternation on social media, all new Venom was actually my Marvel pick of the week. I just realized I never put up the banner. How will we know what's happening if I don't have the banner up? I even moved the timer up. Then my Image pick of the week was, we're going to go over the timer though, was Hornsby and Halo from Peter Tomasi and Peter Schneidberg with John Callis and Rob Lee. However, after reading my Image pick of the week, just barely, was Sam and Twitch Case Files, written by Todd Father McFarlane, really? And then Indie Comics, I assume my pick of the week would be Catabasis, which finally got uploaded in Global Comics, so we could talk about it this week. I did love this book, don't get me wrong, but I became obsessed with this book called No, Not a Man that was released on Twitch. What is it called? Itch.io. Anyway, we're going to talk about it later, but it will not leave my brain. And that became my truly indie, released by a single person pick of the week. So look, we have quite a moment of crisis to get into that because I have generated a moment of crisis with just a few hours to press time. But first, let's take a look at all of your comments and say some hellos. And then if you're new to this, after the moment of crisis, then we do a little AMA, and then usually around the 25 to 30 or sometimes 35-minute mark, then I start talking about all of the new comics out in the last week. Let me just put this post on Blue Sky so people know that we're here. Okay, so let's see. Raptor Rancher, do I read Lady Mechanica? Hello, by the way, Raptor Rancher. Do I read Lady Mechanica from Image? I love Lady Mechanica. I think it's behind another book here, but I have all of them. But I only read the first volume, so that love is based on the first volume, and then I just kept buying it out of habit. So now I have 7 volumes with an 8th on the way, and I probably need to be bullied into sitting down and reading them. Because what's weird is I'm never reading new comics when new issues come out. I'm always catching up on trades. I don't know how that equation works. Bunkmaster B, of course, always in the top 2 commenters of the week. Last night was a late night. I need the power of Krisis to get me through today. Last night was the first night that was not a late night for me for several nights running. Oh my goodness. Cruel Angel, love my rants. Well, there's going to be some rants today because I put up a warning earlier in the chat that I did not love the poll list this week. So there will be some rants and raves. Oh boy. 5th of Jack Gaming says, didn't enjoy the poll list. That would create a LOL crisis. Hello to a 5th of Jack Gaming. Let's see who else. Hello to Max Appleman. He's got a new Beetle Bop up. It is And Your Bird Can Sing, and it is very psychedelic. He harmonized it for four different lines, which is even more harmony than it is in the original. As we know, I like everybody to go and play Max's videos at least 4 times when you're done watching the show, or even in the background to the show. That's fine too. So please go to Max Appleman's channel. Super Job, who now has a profile picture. You're lucky I recognized you because it's not just purple anymore, Super Job, but you are a regular, so I know your name. By my request, you now have a profile pic. See, this is how you get to watch the brain, the hamster and the wheel and the brain move in real time at the beginning of the show. I'm just getting the hamster going because I just caught up with reading it after I was reacting. Edwin Billiats, hoping I'm doing well today. One of our regulars, and we love to see his face. Totally confused on the time. Me too. He's in New Orleans. I'm in New Zealand, but we had our daylight savings, which already happened for all of you. It's very confusing, but you're here, so we all figured it out. I am no Jedi. Hello to you. Holding space for me. Well, we're going to have to hold space for some of the things I'm going to get in today. For my greetings from Palm Beach, Florida. Hello to you. We have Neil Pereira. Good morning to you. James Abel's got the popcorn out already. Elon Reese, who I almost had a near encounter with getting to stream with Elon this weekend. It didn't actually happen. So maybe one day. But I am now in a group chat with him, so we're that much closer. Reximo is here, can feel the rant coming in his bones. Kira to Beyond Comics, my fellow Kiwi, also in the group chat. Jordan Paul's saying hello. And who else have I not said hi to yet? Logan Wayne saying hello to everybody in the chat. Stephen Patterson, you could say it was a moment of crisis. The moment of crisis was almost that I was ahead this morning. I was on time. I sat down. My guitar was tuned. Everything was going my way. I turned on the video and realized I still had my hair and my little sleep bun. So you almost got to see me without the beautiful locks. But would it even be a Crushing Crisis show without the beautiful locks? Kenneth Crayley Jr., always love to see. Kenneth here, brain tissue paper, greetings. Just listening in the background as you read through some of your backlog, a great combination if your brain can do that. I cannot listen to like talking or audiobooks while I read. Mall 360 is here. Always a great week to have a crisis. Absolute Green Lantern left me wanting more. I might have been wanting something after that issue, but if you want to find out what, you will have to stay tuned. Let's see, anybody else we haven't. Raging Sloth finally read FML, and it's so awesome. Yes! I am here. I mean, this whole 3-hour weekly show is pretty much just a commercial to get you to all read Kelly Sue DeConnick's FML. So if one more person reads it a week, then my job here is done. Jenny saying hello. No spoilers, says Adam Messenger. No spoilers about what? I mean, this show, just if we're not clear, is fully a spoiler show. There will always be spoilers. Hank is excited for today's stream. I think Earth Geomaster is here. And oh my gosh, you people, you have so much to say. I love you. Jim McKay seems to do a great job no matter what title he is on. Yeah, he is getting to be very, very reliable. Petey Ma is here. Oh, I didn't actually say hello, Matt H. Matt H, who's in the comments on several streams that I was on last week, and I always love seeing you here. James, the Media Mancer, saying hello. Lance McNair saying hello. Brendan Riley just got to film and have dinner with Al Milgram, Jim Steranko, Jim Shooter, David Michelini, and other legends. Wow, you may have had the coolest weekend of everybody here. Also, hello to Eric, hello to Jeremy, and hello again to Adam Messenger. No spoilers in response to my hiding the thumbnails. Okay, well, I guess that means it's time for Moment of Crisis, right? So I actually do need a visual aid for Moment of Crisis today, although it will not be with the timer. Because it does not involve needing a timer. So Moment of Crisis today, just before press time, just before bed, I got myself embroiled in a little moment of crisis on the internet because I had saved this book to be last. And I guess I should say, like, what is the moment of crisis? So today, Moment of Crisis is going to be about AI generated art and comic books. Bum, bum, bum. So here's why. Last night, I had saved this book to last. It's called Polis, and it's by Mark Russell with art from someone named Lacey. And it is part of AWA, Artists, Writers, Artisans is what AWA stands for. And it was about a future protopia. So we'll get into more of that later, but a protopia is like almost a utopia, but not quite. But we're going to talk about it more when the issue gets here. However, I saved it to last because it was a 50-page issue, and it seems like it was going to be a little uplifting. And I like Mark Russell in uplifting mode rather than joke mode. So I was like, this will be a good last book of the Pulse. So it's like 10-something last night. I read it. I get to this really cool back matter that talks about all of the science and technology that would be in the background of the story, which we will talk about later. And then I start reading the artist bios of the people who've done this concept art in the back matter. And 3 of them say they specifically used generative AI tools in their art and credit it as one of their artistic mediums. So I went on to Twitter, or not Twitter, not anymore. Nope. We went on to Blue Sky, and I was like, wow, really surprised to have read this book about a protopia from a label called AWA that has 3 concept artists that are using generative AI. Really surprised to see Mark Russell's name attached to this book. And then I went to sleep. Stupid, dumb. Why did I go to sleep? Only to wake up to find that tons of people had reposted this and that people would start asking Mark Russell directly because he's on Blue Sky about it. And Mark Russell responded that he had no idea that this was happening in the back matter of his comic book and would definitely be looking into it, but that there is no inspiration drawn from the generative AI. Okay, so that catches you up to the morning that I've been having so far. When I woke up at 5:45 and I was like, I'm blowing up. I mean, I'm not really blowing up. It wasn't even like 100 likes. But Blue Sky is a much smaller space than Twitter, so I think we can say things are blowing up when they're much smaller on Blue Sky than when they are elsewhere. But blowing up within the comics community enough that somebody asked Mark Russell about it. So I want to take a step back here and talk a little bit about AI, which I know, like, oh, snore, everybody talking about AI all the time. But I want to talk about it from the perspective of somebody who actually has done some work adjacent to the AI industry without getting into using AI or doing anything with generative AI, because I've had to really learn about it in the past couple of years and what it really means. So when we use something that says that it has AI in it, it does not always mean that it's generative AI, and it does not always mean that it was trained on somebody else's copyrighted material, right? There's this amazing editing tool for videos that you will go through and mark all of the places you and then just take them out so that when you publish it as a podcast, there's no ums. That's not generative AI. That's just machine learning. So machine learning is teaching the machine to do a task, which I am not opposed to. The machine overlords can take all of my busy work. Thank you very much, right? But the thing is that at a point, the thing you're training the machine learning system on starts to matter. So we could feed that particular machine learning system tons of recordings of tons of normal people just umming in their normal phrases, and we do not have to feed it all of the works of Shakespeare or all of the film scripts from the Star Wars series in order to learn that. It just machine learns on whatever you tell it to learn. There's nothing inherently good or evil or bad or wrong about it. It's just machine learning. Even something like Grammarly, which I'm sure you're going to get an ad for during this on YouTube, even something like Grammarly, which says it does AI, a big hunk of Grammarly is just machine learning. They have taught it through machine learning to find grammatical errors and propose the correct kind of grammar to you. It was doing that before anybody was using the buzzword of AI. However, now Grammarly has additional features where it's like, write this email to my boss for me. That is generative AI, but not all generative AI is necessarily copyright infringing. You can train a large language model or even a model that's going to produce images on whatever you give it to train on. So if you gave it all open source works to train on, if you gave it all 13th century, I guess not literature, let's fast forward a little, 18th century literature to train on, then you would have a large language model, generative AI, that was trained on something outside of copyright. Is everybody with me so far? Okay. But the problem is that the current way that people are using generative AI, like ChatGPT, like Midjourney, like all these tools, is using it in a way that it has hoovered up copyrighted art. And you know what? People have no way to opt out of that, because that is just the writing and the art that these things have been trained on. They've been trained on everything that could be scraped from the internet. There's lawsuits right now that it was trained on obviously copyrighted works, not novels that Facebook scraped and fed into their AI. So it is unavoidable, no matter how ethical you are as a person and how ethical you want to be as a person. The large language model you're using for generative AI images or text probably was trained on copyrighted work, right? Which is problematic if we are creating art with it. Now, it is one thing if you just go into that and you use it as a search engine. It's a stupid thing. That's stupid. Stop doing it because it's not a search engine. All that generative AI is a predictive model of what the next word ought to be. So it's not doing a live search, right? But this is a topic I could hold forth on further. But whenever you're creating these images, it is going through a whole trawl of images that scraped off the web, and it doesn't know if that's from an artist who is alive or dead, if it's somebody from somebody's DeviantArt before DeviantArt made themselves no-bot crawl. It just doesn't know. And so I myself was responsible for, because I didn't understand what it did back when it first came out, and I used it to make a series of images that looked like famous artists painting kiwis, whether it was the fruit or the bird, right? And so I was like, I want Calliobots painting kiwis. I want Van Gogh painting kiwis. And in my mind, it wasn't going to hurt anybody because it was about a kiwi fruit, which there's 100 pictures of out there, thousands, millions. And these artists, who are dead, and you can, get reproductions of their art. But I was not thinking about that middle step of what it was generating from, which brings me back to this comic book, Polis. So as it happens, some of the concept art for this comic by the label Artists, Writers, Artisans was generated by concept artists who say that they use Midjourney and other generative AI tools to create their concepts. I call foul play there, because unless they totally trained a model on their own work or public sourced work, which they didn't if they're using Midjourney, they are now creating art that is based on other people's art. So they might have had a terrific prompt, and some of the concept art in the back of this was mind-blowing. I can't wait to talk about this comic divorced from those things. But that was the concept work in the back of the book. So that's all I could go on. So that's what I went on to Blue Sky. I was like, I'm shocked that this book, which is about climate change, by the way, that's the thing we haven't gotten into, that all this AI stuff takes tons of energy, but that's outside of the comic book realm. Different Moment of Krisis. So that's why I was so surprised to see this particular comic book using all that. Now, Mark also says he turned in his script and he was not influenced by any of this AI generated stuff. And I absolutely believe him. He has no reason to not be truthful about that. But the way that the book presented it was that this was the concept work. And for all of us that love TV, movies, films, even comic books, we know that generally concept art does influence the final art. They draw from the concepts. So if Mark Russell didn't look at the concepts, that's cool. And I'm happy to know that now. Thank you, Mark Russell, for clarifying. Did the artist look at the concepts to inspire their design of the floating city in the book? I don't know. I don't like that I have to worry about this, about a comic book that I bought with my money. And I was honestly sick to my stomach when I thought, oh my gosh, there are aspects of this comic about climate change that were stolen from other artists and generated with AI. So look, we're going to talk about the comic itself later. But here's my moment of crisis for all of you is I just think be aware of what technology is and what it's being used for, whether you're the one using it or whether you're consuming somebody's use of it. No technology on its own is ethical or non-ethical, just as a piece of technology. It's in how we use it. So I want, everything is said to be AI right now because it's a marketing word. Not all AI is evil. You have to ask, is it large language model? Is it generative? If it's generative, what was it trained on? These are the questions we should ask. And personally, as somebody who should know better as a journalist, I probably should not have started out with my flippant, like, whoa, Mark Russell, what's good? Although I resisted actually posting that because it was late at night and I wasn't trying to create a big controversy. I was just trying to be disappointed in this one comic book. But I should have known better, because just because it's concept art in the back of the book, it doesn't mean Mark Russell knew anything about it. But when you look at a creator-owned book, and clearly this isn't creator-owned, but it's creator participatory, I kind of assumed that he would know that it came from that. So a little bit of egg on my face, maybe a little bit of egg on his face, and I'm going to keep looking into this. So follow me on Blue Sky I'm crushing comics, if you want to follow this developing story. But Mark Russell is looking into it right now, and that's my moment of crisis. I think we should demand from our comic books that it is the original artistic work of people, and the same energy we bring when one person traces one O-face, Greg Land, who I love. Greg, I love you. You're my guy. That, you know what? I hope it's an open source O-face and he's not stealing a copyrighted O-face, because that's where I'm standing on this. Everybody uses reference in their art, but to have the machine incorporate references directly from other people's art in ways that are inextricable from yours, that I am not cool with. And that was today's moment of crisis. It was extemporaneous, but I will say clearly I've been stewing on this since I woke up 3 hours ago, because I did not expect to see a response from Mark Russell on my blue sky. Again, small potatoes. I'm not trying to make myself out like I'm some big ruler of the internet here, but clearly the thoughts that I had broke containment of my own timeline. Okay, let's see what you all said about me. By the way, I'm just gonna put up the banner. Clearly, we don't have as much time for Ask Me Anything because I just went on a pretty long moment of crisis. And I still have to talk about Crushing Crisis too. But let's do some AMAs because you haven't gotten a chance really to participate yet. And then let's continue. Where did I leave off? Okay. We left off with Adam Messenger talking about spoilers. So let's see. And we said hello to Jeremy. Okay, now I know where we are. And here's James very helpfully pointing out my blue sky, not even knowing how deep I was going to be getting into that rant. Hey, Johnny's here. Hello. We are going to be on a stream. I know what stream it's going to be. And it's going to make it work. And we're going to make it work with your schedule because I'm really excited to be on with you live. Hank, it's sad that one of Sweden's best-selling children's book series currently is full AI-generated illustrations. That's a bummer. Matt H, AI will never replace the passion of crisis. Well, I mean, wouldn't it be cool if we could train it? Here's the thing I would do. And I've thought about this. I would love to run a large language model on my own local computer and feed it all of Crushing Crisis, which is 4 million words, just to see what it would be like to chat with me. Like it would know all of my opinions about comics and stuff. To me, that's fun. And I'm just stealing from myself, which is what I do shamelessly on this show anyway, with all the things I say over and over again. So that wouldn't have any goal concerns at all. Tyler Bear saying Peter. Adam Messenger, yo boss, when I called you the C word in that email, that 100% really wasn't me. It was an accent through AI. The computer just thinks you're a C word, but not me. Yeah, you told the AI to write it with an Australian accent, and Australians say the C word all the dang time. So it was just writing you an Australian business email, boss. Don't worry about it. Tyler Bear, my favorite Near Mint collaborator, don't tell Jess or Lars. I mean, I love all my Near Mint collaborators equally. I just like Sean from Comics Pals more, I think is the answer. That's a joke. I love her. I do really love Sean from Comics Pals. I've seen numerous people using ChatGPT as a search engine. Yeah, Logan, it just does not work like that. The thing to remember, anytime you're tempted to use ChatGPT, is it always is just predicting what the next word ought to be. Right? So there are useful ways to use it that are not theft. Like if you're just like, I wrote this paragraph, can you resummarize it for me? It's going to resummarize your paragraph. It's going to use techniques that it's learned from scraping all this copyrighted stuff, but it's going to give you back your paragraph. I'm not advocating for that or against that. I have a degree in journalism and communications. I would like everybody to just write under their own power. But that is what I have to say about that. Tyler Bear, to be fair, Omni, Peter, Lars, and Jess are basically my dream blunt / drink rotation at this point. Well, I'll just have to snort pixie sticks because I don't do any of those things anymore. Jenny, I think it's pretty clear that some AI generation got into the final book, at least from the images that the couch soup interview, like the gull or the floating piece of wood. See, Jenny, I'm not saying that I think the artist used AI for that. So the concept stuff, which I'm not going to show because I don't want to show generated stuff on this, and the artists in their bios were clear that they work with generative AI. This is not me jumping to conclusions. They were designing stuff like the coral system under the water, or like what the underneath of the floating ship would be, or what their agriculture engineering would look like. So I really want to be clear that I'm not pointing any fingers at this artist, Lacey. Kevin Cork said, "What AI is just a tool, but one we should engage with critically." Perfectly said, Kevin. If Greg Land were really brave, he'd be tracing off pics of his own OFs. That's how I would do it. Right? That's totally the face I make. Stephen Patterson, am I currently reading anything other than weekly polls? Because they seem hit or miss. Oh yeah, they do, Stephen Patterson. I don't always have time to, which I'm trying to find a way to correct. So I'm trying 2 things. I'm trying to have a reward of an older book at the end of my polls every week that I read. And then if there's an older book related to my polls, I'm trying to just put it right in the middle of the polls. So this week, I actually went back and started reading Resurrection Man from 1997, which I've always owned because I have it prepped for a bind. I was originally going to get it bound like this, and then I just ran out of time in the States. But so I have it. I have every issue him and the body doubles have ever appeared in. So now that there's a new Resurrection Man comic book, I'm just going to read 4 issues of my bind for every 1 new issue. So I think that's how I'm going to start forcing myself to get back into reading old stuff. I'm in the middle of a Batman post-crisis reading project. I'm way farther than the Finest have already gotten, so I don't know that I can just use the Finest for that. And then I always have long reads that I want to do, and usually I finish a few a year. So I think, I mean, I did just catch up on Saga, so that was like a longer read, but usually I have like 1 or 2 indie books that I really am trying to cross off my list of things I always wanted to read, and I'm kind of just haven't decided yet. When Marvel says Krakoa will cover 11 Omnis, is that chronological only and separate from the creator titles? I think the implication, I never have any insider information, caveat, is that at some point Omar asked David Graeberl or somebody there, and they said, feels like it would be about 11 to do it anthology style. And Omar and I were like separately, yeah, because we've both mapped it and we both had it between 10 and 13. So depending on like if they skip things or if some things are relegated to a side omnibus, like I mean, we could have a whole Krakoa mapping episode, but I think you can't integrate the end of X-Force and Wolverine into reading order with the fall of the House of X stuff, because it all finished before the first issue of that, even though it was being released alongside it. So that's, I think, what all of our concern is when we keep moaning and moaning about release order versus reading order. At a point, there are going to be things that have to be placed earlier in reading order, even though they were equivalent in release order. So we're looking for positive signals in the first couple of volumes that Marvel understands that and has done the correct shuffling. And if they're not doing that now, the fear is that we keep buying these, and then when it starts to matter later on in the line, when there's clearly things that happened earlier but were released alongside, it will be broken. So that's why I'm so skeptical. Reximo, the problem I have with AI creating art is that art is one thing that really defines us as human beings, and also there's a joy in art. See, this is one of the things that really gets me about AI. Like, there are people out there, like, I am bad at visual art. Painting on these lips is the extent of my visual art skills, and some weeks that goes better than others. And so it is very tempting to be like, ooh, I want to know what the main character in this story I'm thinking about would look like. Let's go to AI. But I recognize, like, I have friends who make money because they've trained to do that thing. In the same way that, like, people who just have a cool image and they're like, oh, write me a 300-word synopsis of what a story about this could be based on blah and blah. Like, that's the livelihood of all these comic authors and something I can do too. I don't want people to do that with AI, and I take joy in it. I hate this idea that people are like, I didn't have time to write this boring novel, I generated with AI. That's not how novels work. If it's that boring, then probably nobody needs to read it. So that stuff gets me. Cyril, hello to you. John Pauls, for my sanity and as a gesture of good faith, I for one will not ask you a Krakoa reading order question for 72 hours. Look, that's a comfortable topic based on where we are today. Logan Wayne, could you consider doing a Comics 101 type video where you explain less appreciated parts of comics, inking, lettering, and coloring? Wow, that would be really fun. You know, pre-recorded videos that have editing, I really were doing them heavily back in 2021, which a lot of you remember. It takes over 4 hours, sometimes over 8 hours to do one of those videos, to script it, shoot it, find all the art, edit it. And as it happens, a new comic book guide, which I do have one to talk about today, takes 4 to 8 hours, unless it's like huge, like Superman or something. So for every video that I edit, that's a comic guide that we didn't get. So that it's a really tricky equation. Like, I want to be on, I would love to be on YouTube every day in front of you again. I really, really would. I enjoy being a media figure. What can I say? But that means no comic guides, because I'm not multiple man and I can't make a dupe of myself by clapping hands. So we got to make some choices sometimes. But I will take that under consideration. I don't think there's any pre-recorded videos coming anytime soon, just for infrastructure purposes, but there will be other streaming videos coming soon. Crisis from TaylorMade. So happy to be here in another amazing stream. Serenade us with your wisdom. There will be a literal serenade too at the end of a song. Jordan Pauls, could I read the Dawn of X Omnis until Inferno because it's more connected storytellers? And then, yes, you absolutely could. And I think, actually, if we're being honest, let me unpack this for people who did not immediately cotton on to the Krakoa small talk here. So Jonathan Hickman only wrote Krakoa from 2019, beginning with House of X, Powers of X, aka Hoxpox, until Inferno at the end of 2021. Then Hickman left. They did a kind of semi-resetting event that nobody needs to read called The X Lives and X Deaths of Wolverine by Ben Percy. And then what I call the 4 legs of the Krakoa stool were in charge, which was Duggan on the main X-Men book, Gillen on Immortal X-Men, Ewing on Red X-Men, and also we have to credit Cy Spurrier for his whole like Way of X, Legion of X thread too. They were the 4 authors that got involved in the Sense of Sinister. They were the 4 authors who steered things all the way to the end, and then Spurrier dropped off, and then Gillen, Ewing, and Duggan managed those last 6 months. My point being that we already have a Duggan omnibus, we already have a Ewing omnibus, both announced. I would bet you $1,000 that they're going to announce a Gillen omnibus. And then the question is, would they also announce a Spurrier omnibus? At that point, you have every important plot point to get you to the end of Krakoa. You don't, like all those other books, some of them are good, Realm of X, Captain Britain, Children of the Vault by Dennis Camp, right? But none of them really contained any essential information about the middle of the plot that you needed to get to the end of Krakoa, no more than X-Men Unlimited did, and they're not reprinting that. So Jordan's point, and I think it's right, is that if they just do sequential anthology books up until Inferno, which I think would be like 5 or 6 books, then you really could just have those 4 creator omnibuses and then the Fall of the House of X omnibus at the end, and you would do fine. But that's still 10 omnibuses, and at that point, we're only missing like 2 or 3 omnibuses of all the side stuff, so just do it right, Marvel. Okay. Hank, I've worked at places as an illustrator where AI has been a huge issue to find competent people. When corrections need to be made to art, the competence is not there due to the over-reliance of technology. And that's a good point. With AI, you can't insist on a specific revision. I was working with a brilliant designer at work last week, and I said, look, I have a comped image that I don't even want to show you. Here's the headline. Here's the thing that we need. Like, I trust you, go to town. And she delivered a brilliant image that I didn't have any edits on. But let's say my one edit was like, ooh, I need the drop shadow to just be knocked back a little bit on those words, because at smaller sizes on phones, it's really aliasing really, really bad. If you had done that with generative AI, you could give it the same image and be like, hey, could you please do less drop shadow on this image? But you have no guarantee that generative AI is going to produce the same thing all over again. Now, there are probably AIs trained on large language models and like instructions and stuff that know what drop shadow is and are smart enough to erase the drop shadow and then put a smaller drop shadow. Or you could just go into frigging Photoshop and double click the panel or whatever your thing is and just turn down the drop shadow by 1 pixel. So yeah. Okay, future LMM will probably be able to generate a Krisis live stream based on all my videos. Eerie, who knows? It could be right now. I mean, this makeup almost looks too good today. Is it really me? I didn't mess up once. There's no mistakes. How do we know that I'm real? Look at the little swoosh in the hair. This is almost like a generated version of Krisis. Would I ever look this good on my own? Probably not. Tyler Bear, I'm curious, do I have a legit favorite run of all time? I mean, that's a really hard question. Here's the thing I'll say. In my heart, I love Alan Davis Excalibur. I've reread it so many times. It never fails for me. I think every issue, and I mean when he's writing himself, I think he came back with issue 42. I just love it so much. In terms of like, I think this is a perfect comic book. I say all the time, it's 4 kids walk into a bank by Boss. Who are the actual full names of these people? Matthew Rosenberg, Tyler Boss, and Thomas Maurer, who did the lettering. I think this is a perfect comic book. I don't know if it's my favorite comic book of all time, but I do think it's perfect. And then many other things. But you know, it's hard for me because my brain, maybe it's neurodivergence, but things are only real to me if I've written them down. And so my database that I've kept from 2017, I could go right down and tell you all my top rated things that I read before 17, which was tens of thousands, I have a murky memory of. So it's always about like going back and rereading things now, which like, do I want to reread all like probably 20,000 comic books I read from 2010 to 2017 to remember what my favorites were? No, I'm probably not going to do that. But I mostly read physical at that point, so I probably own the thing. So going through the boxes and stuff, which is why I did the unpacking videos back in 2018 and 2019, right? That's when that was, because it allowed me to like lay my hands on stuff and have memories about it. Richard Fearing is here. Javier Hernandez is here. Any collected editions I'm currently especially looking forward to? The Lazarus oversized hardcover, because I'm obsessed with Lazarus. See how easy I forget? Lazarus is my favorite comic book. Lazarus is my favorite comic book. Lazarus oversized hardcover, volume 4, because then there's only 1 volume after that, and I reread the whole thing every time a new hardcover comes out. The last time they came out, I think I just moved into this house, it was years ago. And Local Man oversized hardcover, because I loved that book. Kane saying good afternoon to everybody, making another batch of soup for the family who are under the weather. On the upside about not being multiple banana means I didn't absorb Kid Krisis when they were born. Okay, that was dark. Peter David went dark in that story. The name changes, saying, I'm skipping a couple things. I'm trying to move it along. Sperrier, yeah, the thing with Sperrier out of Messenger is it feels like he kind of, once he leaves a company, he's really on the outs until he comes back. Because after he left, I'm not trying to say anything about him. I'm just saying when he left DC after the original Hellblazer run, he was like super on the outs with DC. And then he was like, I'm at Marvel now. And then it was like, friendship with Marvel canceled. I'm at DC. So who knows? I just don't know if he's a name that would sell an omnibus, but I do really, Cy Sperrier, it's complex. Sometimes I love him, sometimes I don't. I really did love him at the X office. Jean-Remy Agueta quickly passing by to say hi while at work, and hopefully we have a good day, and looking for my absolute gel thoughts. It's going to be the first book in alphabetical order if we ever get there. Novarg, who, you know, the stream does not officially start until I've seen Novarg's profile picture. How are we doing today? I'm feeling great, actually, because I actually slept last night for the first night in days and days and days and days and days. Tyler Bear is going to read Excalibur. How often do I find myself rereading books I've already read? Not too often, because there's just such a crush of new books, but like in my my fantasy world, I would be rereading something I love every single day. Wait, I hauled 20K comics around the world. It's almost like there was a video where I talked about the 25,000 comic books that I hauled around the world. And you see me out in the world, out in the rain, driving my car. It's like, it was fun. That took a long time to produce and a long time to edit. And I've mentioned already in the channel, if I thought there was a taste for me doing New Zealand lifestyle videos from all of you comic people, I would be doing that. My dream back in 2000, before there was YouTube, there was that guy, Justin TV or whatever, who was like always online constantly. I'm like, I want to be him. I want to be broadcast 24/7. Now, do I want to be broadcast 24/7? Maybe 14/5. But if there was an appetite for me going out and doing things, I absolutely would go out and do things and put more of those. Why am I, do I have the feeling I'm one of the few got that? Is this the DM of Road to Onslaught or is this the main? I will always take Rogue on a cover over another cover. So that's why I got that one. Okay. I do own the Lazarus RPG, and that led me to get all of the modern age RPG source books. All right, last question, then we're going to move on. Which superhero would I want to have dinner with? Mr. Terrific. He's like my stealth favorite DC character. He's so smart, but he's also not as divorced from reality as Reed Richards. And I feel like I could talk about any topic and I would just learn so much from him. Okay, so I do have one more thing that I want to show and talk about before we get into me. I can afford to do this because I only have 45 pulls this week. It was not a big week of pulls. So I know that we have some time here. I'm going to share my screen. Let's try this layout. Oh no, that's no fun. Because I put it on the other screen, we can only make it so big. All right, still got a learning curve here. So here's CrushingKrisis.com as you would see it vertically scrolling on his phone. And I just want to remind you that usually if I'm on top of my bullshit, before this stream, I already have previews up of all the books from next week, including my picks. The image at the top of the post is always my pick. So here's my next week picks. The Jinx silent issue from G.I. Joe Real American Hero, Green Lantern Corps #3 from DC, and Jedi Knights #2 from Marvel. Really excited. That's all next week or this week, but on next week's show. But then look, there's a new guide to everybody's favorite, or at least my favorite, pansexual murder son, Daken. And this guide is available to, I think, everybody who's at the $1 Patreon or up. And I went through every single one of his appearances and wrote if they are recommended or not. And I found the 100 issues that you can read just to get the core story of Daken, which I almost always do when I do a side character. But wait, there's more. For people that are $2 patrons, I did this thing where I actually wrote a life update that got kind of personal, and I just did it for patrons. I've never done that before. I used to put it on Patreon, but I was like, I should own my own content. So I put it on Crushing Krisis. So this is like me just talking about like my week, swimming, the kid, all that stuff. But it's behind a little bit of a wall because, and this will be the last thing I say, it's really great to have people supporting Patreon. I literally looked at this weekend and was like, whoa, you guys wound up paying for something I really needed for CK last month. I mean, I paid for it out of pocket, but then it turned out Patreon covered it, which was amazing. Patreon, as it turns out, can be seen off of Patreon through their API. And so I really try not to expose a whole lot of my writing about Kid Crisis to the general internet because there are people that want to read it that don't have a relationship to her or her life. And so I'm very careful about what I say on here. You think I talk about her a lot, but I always check with her first if I can say the things that I say about her here. And so I decided I don't want to put that stuff on Patreon anymore. So I think it's going to be much more common that I'm going to say that I wrote something on Patreon, but then it's going to be on Crushing Krisis. So your Patreon support still really counts. You still have access to all that. Patreon is kind of the key to open the door and unlock stuff on Crushing Krisis. But always my real home on the internet, other than here, is CrushingKrisis.com, and it is pumping along recently. I have a couple of other guides coming, some of the ones that we have talked about. So that's going to happen. Okay, I think that's all. And you know what? This took 38 minutes, and that's fine because we're all having a good time. Okay, so now let me bring up the PDFs of the week and the credits of the week. And let's start talking about some comic books, y'all. So this was a smaller week than usual, both in general across the industry and for me in specific. So this week I only had, I think ideally I would have had 48 pulls, but then that's like my ideal number of pulls. And then some of the things aren't available digitally or they get delayed or whatever. So that was not actually the number of pulls I actually read. I think I read something like 45 in the total sum. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I've got my credits PDF so I can see it. Now, just as a reminder, I do not see your comments live generally while I'm doing this. I keep kind of like a little half an eye on it just so I can see if the internet has gone bad or something. I will take a break today around the letter J, because that's the halfway point. So we'll have another little AMA, catch up, see all of your reactions to the books. I do go back and read all the comments. I really appreciate your comments. I would never pre-record this because I would not get your live stream of comments. What would the point be? I'm sure there'll be 1 week that I just have to pre-record it because I'm like busy and I won't be here during this day, but that will suck. So please continue chatting with me and I will see it when we get to the J's. Okay, here we go. So the first book is actually not alphabetical as all the other books usually are, because I continued reading Reversal from Alex DeCampi, Skylar Patridge, Kelly Fitzpatrick, and Hassan Otsman Alhau, because it's broken up. It's an OGN. It came out last week, and it's broken up into chapters that are about 44 pages each. So each chapter is about a single issue. And you saw it was in my top 10 this week. So I read the next 2 chapters and about 160 pages into it, and it is just incredible. So let's talk about it. This story is about a world where a magical bomb went off and it turned normal ground into a magical forest, and now deadly magical stuff is coming out of it all the time. And this woman who's seen on the panel here with her family works for the government department that's looking into magical stuff, but it turns out that one of her kids, her daughter, who has a chronic pain issue that makes it very hard to get around, got her hands on a magical artifact and can now turn into this very hunky magical guy who knows where the forest came from. So what got really interesting in these 2 chapters that I read today is that the mom was like, you cannot keep turning into this white man with magical powers. It's dangerous. Like, let me just kind of navigate and explore. But this giant eagle griffin, I guess it's a griffin because it has lion paws, attacks the city. And the daughter's like, I've got to turn into the guy to save the city. But her brother also has touched a magical artifact and he's turned into a bird boy. And so at a point, she and her hunky magic guy with the sword have to decide, are they going to save the griffin or are they going to save the brother? And it gets really sad. And then the next chapter is kind of all the ramifications for their family and realizing just how much danger they're in. This artwork is so incredible. The coloring is so amazing. It's the thing that I love is there's these really big, bold figures that I love. And sometimes it does like a knocked out background. I just smacked my screen. Sometimes it does a knocked out background, like this yellow background here, but a lot of times there is a lot of detail in the background. So as opposed to that book we were reading, Murder Kingdom, where really great, bold figures looking a lot like this, but sometimes the backgrounds were like really neutral. This has so much going on in the background. I love the writing. It actually, tonally, it's very similar to FML. Very, very similar to FML. So I guess I'm going to let this OGN into my top 10 comics of the year because it's episodic. It's not presented as this is a 100-page story. It has specific chapters that I could easily envision being single issues. And so I'm just reading 2 a week. So I'm just going to treat it like it had 2 single issues out a week for however many. I think it's going to take me 2 weeks to finish it. And if it winds up in my top 10, it winds up in my top 10. I know it's a big ask to tell you to go and buy a whole original graphic novel because that's expensive. So I am not officially recommending it until I'm finished with it. But I'm telling you right now that I am obsessed with it. Okay. So have that information and we will continue reading it for the next 2 weeks. And also I mentioned this last week. I just need a better way to find original graphic novels because a lot of my process for the show is only looking at single issues and I don't want to miss cool stuff like this. Okay. Now we're onto the books of the week. I don't read 2000 AD anymore. It used to be a reward. Then it stopped feeling like a reward. So the first book this week, oh Lord, is Absolute Green Lantern. Okay. So here's the thing. All of these Absolute DC books have been posed as the best of the best of the best, not only from a writer perspective, but from an artist perspective too. And I just think that this artist, Janoy Lindsay, is fine, but I'm getting mid-tier boom title from this. I'm not getting one of the best artists in all of comic books. I think the art was fitting. It looked fine. The character likenesses were solid. I could follow the movement and the action. I just felt like it was another comic book. The other thing that I felt about this was that as we know, I don't love Green Lantern and I don't know all the Green Lantern lore. So I was probably coming to this a lot colder than I have to any of the other Absolute books so far. There were things in this that it turns out I totally missed because I didn't know about them and somebody had to explain to me afterwards. But even my reading of it, I just wasn't excited. All of the other Absolute books kind of took their core premise of their character and really twisted it, like Wonder Woman raised by Circe, Superman came to Earth later, right? But this one was kind of like, hey, all of the Green Lanterns you've ever loved, John Stewart, Hal, Joe, and Guy, all live together in this dusty town, which to me it just, the whole tone of it, from the art to the writing to everything, it felt like one of DC's YA graphic novels. It did not feel like it was at the caliber of craft of the other Absolute books to me, and it felt way too convenient for me. It didn't feel like it was essentially about just taking one aspect of Hal Jordan's origin and removing the hope, which in a way might give him more hope, which is the way all of the other books have been pitched. Now, I'm on the record as thinking Al Ewing needs a vacation. I don't think his books have been that great for a while now. I think there's an Emperor Had No Clothes thing going on, which maybe will be it was going to be my moment of crisis. Then the AI thing happened. So I'm not saying you're a bad person if you like it. I'm not saying it's a bad comic book. I'm not saying that Mark Russell I'm not saying Mark Russell is a bad person from earlier. I'm not saying Al Ewing is a bad person. I'm not saying Janelle Lindsay's a bad artist. I'm saying this book did not work for me at all, and it was boring. And the more I thought about it, the more it just felt like I'd read a really mid YA comic and not a comic from DC's Absolute line. So that is where I am on it, which gives me a great segue to talk about Absolute Superman. Absolute Superman, this did not have art from Rafa Sandoval, as mostly it does. It has had art from Carmine Di Giandomenico, who I love because he drew my pansexual murder son Daken many, many times back in 2010, and I do always love him. He has a certain squareness to how he draws people, so I was very nervous to see him draw this, because I'm like, he is not a Jim Lee-derived penciler the way that Rafa Sandoval is, who still did this beautiful, beautiful cover colored by Ulysses Ariola. And of course, I always love the letters here by Becca Carey. But guess what? I really think Carmine Di Domenico changed his style. He's got these little cheek slashes he always does. It's almost similar to the way that John Romita Jr. always does cheek slashes, but he drew these much more like broad, open characters. And I really like the way that Ulysses Ariola colored them in this orange, hazy cast, because they're in this very dusty, oh, we didn't do 2 pages, in this very dusty part of Smallville. So this addresses how this kind of flashes back to Origins again, which I don't love a book that goes back between Origin and present day. So I was kind of annoyed about that. But this Origin story of how Clark originally gets to Earth was really good, and it was beautiful, and it was emotional, and the way that Jason Aaron keeps pushing my emotion. I have emotional buttons that are not just my nipples. I don't know why I pushed my nipples there, but I guess those are the emotional buttons I thought of, and he's pushing them because it really got to me. So I thought this was really good. It was not, I do not like books that alternate between a present day story and an origin story. At the very end of this, we sped up to present day and we saw Lois Lane in the present day, which is good because she's been pretty much absent for most of the past 2 issues. And I think she's really a main driver of plot here. Clearly, I still love this. It's still in my top 10. And what I really love the most is that you could go and read this issue by itself and have not read anything else from this and just read Absolute Superman, and you would absolutely know that what was going on. And this was, in fact, the epilogue to the first arc. So it makes sense that you could read it on its own. You could read it afterwards. Really, really liked Absolute Superman number 6. Now we come to my shocking everyone, including me, Marvel pick of the week. All New Venom by Al Ewing, who I just said maybe needs a nap, maybe a nice midday nap. Or Carlos Gomez, who doesn't need a nap. He's incredible. Frank D'Armata and Clayton Cal. So here's the thing. This generated a lot of controversy this week, because it revealed who has been in this all new Venom costume this whole time. And it is not someone people want to see in that costume. I also am not a fan of them in the costume. However, I have to say some things about why I like this comic book. First of all, this Carlos Gomez art with colors from Frank D'Armata, this is frigging gorgeous. It's so cool. Nobody else is drawing action that looks like this. He's drawing such cool symbiotes. It looks so big and rubbery and shiny, and I just love every part of the action. But the other thing I loved is that Al Ewing laid out the trail of how the characters in the story came to the conclusion of who the Venom is. Some of that trail was available to us as readers. Personally, I think he could have made that a little bit more obvious so we could have cottoned on. I saw people who guessed who it was because they just guessed. I did not see people who guessed who it was based on the reasons the characters figured it out. Personally, I like a mystery that I as a reader can speculate and solve on based on the material in the comic and not extracurricular to the comic. So I do think it fell down a little bit there, but I liked it. And the other thing I liked is it really played this parental relationship between Venom, the symbiote, and Sleeper, the symbiote. And I really, really liked how it used Sleeper, the symbiote here, basically being a sleeper and using people's bodies without them knowing, and Venom, the symbiote, being like, that's not ethical, son. But then we also get a clearly parental relationship between who is in the Venom costume and some of the other characters in the book. And that really, really worked for me. So look, man, I have an open mind. You can do kooky twist with characters who I don't think should be in a Venom costume. But if you tell a good story and if it looks this friggin' good, then I am going to make you my pick of the week. So congratulations, Al Ewing. I hope you enjoyed your nap. But Carlos Gomez, mwah, to Carlos Gomez, love. Oh, I did another page. Look at it. And plus we know that I love pinks and purples and colors. That's my jam. And Frank D'Armata always brings the pinks and the purples and the colors. So I just loved it. Okay. Ooh. I did not read Archie and Friends Level Up, #1. Remember when Archie was really cool for a couple of years there and is being written by like Mark Waid and Nick Spencer? What happened with that? I did read, okay, here's where I get a minute to talk through all 3 of the brief Astonishing digital books. This is Astonishing Avengers issue #10, written by Steve Orlando with art from Francesco Argentiano and colors from Carlos Lopez, letters by Travis Lanham. This is my favorite issue of this so far. This was really, really fun. I'll tell you why. Because it focused just on Captain America and Jim Hammond as the Human Torch. And I think treating this as kind of, remember A plus X, and I had like 1 Avenger and 1 X-Men? Treating this as like 1 core Avenger and 1 Avenger we don't see that much and having them have a fight. Perfect amount of room to explore them, perfect amount of room for quips, action that really tracked. Absolutely love this issue. Astonishing Spider-Man #22 by Scott Aukerman, art from Julian Shaw, color from CC De La Cruz, and letters from Josefino. Look, I'm always going to hate CC De La Cruz's colors on this, and they're good colorists. I don't know their gender, but I hate the little shiny individual panels. We've covered it. The reason I enjoyed this, though, is because it was just funny. It was Spider-Man having an adventure. The adventure had a villain with a crazy weapon that was really fun to read about. It used good vertical scroll. Like, this is what I want. I prefer a book that had team-ups with other Spider people, but this is what I'm looking for from a digital comic book. Then we come to Astonishing X-Men, written by Alex Packendell with art from Philip Sevi, colors from Michael Bartolo, and letters from Clayton Cowles. I'm just not feeling this one. I get what, so as opposed to the Avengers book by Orlando, this just feels so crowded. It's trying to do so many different plots. It's trying to do this thing with Skin. It brings in Wing. Remember Wing, who dies in Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men? Well, we knew he was brought back during Krakoa, and so it has Wing in here, but then it's got Husk, and then it's got Banshee, and it's just a little itty little bitty 12-page digital comic book. And I love swinging for the fences. I totally support swinging for the fences. I think let's go to a ballpark where the fences are just a little closer to home plate in this comic book. That's a thing. I'm not a baseball person, as we will learn from one of the comics later in this stream, but I do know that there is no standard baseball field the way there is in football, and so the fences are at different points. So just swing for closer fence. I love the ambition. I just need the fence to be closer. Here's the full-length Marvel digital comic that comes out every week, which is Avengers Academy. Technically, it's called Avengers Academy Marvel's Voices Infinity comic. I love this book. I just love it because I love these characters, and I love how the artists are actually like evolving. Like I see them getting better and doing new things on it. And Bailey Rosalund, who's the artist here, colored by KJ Diaz, especially did that here. I will offer one critique. I love this book, and I love Anthony Oliveira. I would love to interview him on this channel. I'm hoping I can make that happen at some point. But I will say this. He's doing this thing where he split up the 8 primary Avengers Academy kids into pairs, and they're each having their own adventure at some different point in time. This adventure is early in Asgard with a kid version of Loki, not Kid Loki, just a Loki as a kid. And because it was split up from its prior chapter, even though it's not like I forgot the prior chapter, I just felt like all of the action with these like vampire creatures in Asgard, it was really hard to remember why I cared. And I don't think the comic gave me enough of why I cared. And that's not just for me as somebody who reads like 60 comics a week. I just think it was a little lost in the sauce. However, the personal moments with Brielle, Bloodline, Blade's daughter, really, really cool. And like, that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the personal moments with these characters who won't get those moments. If they get used in a monthly physical comic book, they're just gonna get like, oh, there's Brielle in the background. But here it really, really worked. I like how Escapade was used here a lot. I'm here for the character work. So you know what, if we've got to do some action stuff, you know, every comic needs punching, but I do feel like we're going somewhere in this comic, and I like that. And I still love this comic. It's a little farther outside of my top 12 than it was before, because I just haven't loved this arc splitting everybody up, but I still really fundamentally love it. There's a lot of comics out from this one company that does this comic, Terminus Veil, and I looked on Global Comics. It was late at night, and I'd already read all my other reading, and I was angry about that Polis thing. So I didn't find them. I think they were Kickstarter books, but I would read them. We know, like, so if you're ever an indie creator who happens to be watching this particular second of the show, or you know one, I will read and talk about your books if you give me a digital copy, and I will be honest that I got a digital copy, and I might still hate your book. We never know, but I maybe don't go as hard on your comic, maybe as Marvel. I don't know. We haven't had one I really haven't liked yet, so we haven't had to test that theory. I do already have one lined up for next week. Batgirl. All right. I think it's very unfortunate that this comes out the same week as Birds of Prey, which we'll talk about next, because Birds of Prey does a better Cassandra Cain every single week. And then you've got to read this pathetic comic book, this pathetic excuse for a comic book script right before you read Birds of Prey, if you read enough alphabetical order like I do. And then you get to Birds of Prey and you're like, why did I just read that Batgirl comic? This was so stupid, because it just did the same thing it's been doing for the past 6 issues. This past 6 issues have been the same conversation over and over again. It's Cass being like, I don't know, should I trust my mom, Lady Shiva? And then Lady Shiva being like, trust me, but I'm withholding information. That just happened again here. A little bit of action happened in the background. It didn't really matter that action happened in the background because it was the same conversation we've been reading for 6 issues. This is a character that can't always support her own ongoing book. You do not have time to fuck around like this, Tate Bromball. Also, I hated the lettering from Tom Napolitano. There's this character who spoke in broken up word balloons, but it wasn't psychic. It was just whispering, but they weren't connected, and that pissed me off. So look, I love Takeshi Miyazawa's art, and I love Mike Spicer's colors. You two are excused from this conversation. Tate Bromball, come on. Cassandra Cain had the #2 most wanted omnibus on the DC Omnibus poll last year. She's a character that people want to see more of. We want to see her doing stuff. We want to know who she is. We don't want to see the same conversation over and over again and get over action that just doesn't matter because somebody just gets stabbed in the stomach every single issue, and that's the big twist. Oh, big twist. Okay? I don't understand how with 1/5 of the panel time, Cass is being written that much better in Birds of Prey. I'm just hoping now that this introductory arc is over, we can just tighten the hell up and write some actual issues that show us Cass doing something and don't just string it along for 6 issues in a row, because I do not like this pattern for Batgirl, nor for you as a writer, Tate Bromball, although I'm sure you're a really nice person and you've written some really cool books, and I have liked some of them, but this is an emerging trend that I want to just put a pin in, okay? Good talk. So now we come to Birds of Prey, my DC pick of the week. Y'all, this comic. I'm on the record as saying Kelly Thompson's script for Birds of Prey #1 is one of my favorite #1 script of all time. This, to me, had the same feeling as Birds of Prey #1. Part of that is the colors, and we know I'm a coloring nerd. So I will say, Adriano Lucas may be my favorite colorist at DC, and they've got a lot of great ones. But I love Adriano Lucas. And I feel like he was coloring this in a very bright, flat way that wasn't adapted to this comic when he first joined as the colorist, I think on issue 14 or 15. And he clearly has a range. He colors Justice League, the Atom Project, very differently than he colors this. In the first 13 issues of this, Jordi Belair colored it with a slightly off registration color, which means the colors almost looked like they weren't on plates that actually lined up. So if you're on a 4-color press, a CMYK press, there are plates of colors that are like rolling the color across the book, and it's each color in the book is built from a cyan, a magenta, a yellow, and a black. They're not spot colors. A spot color means that color farted right onto the probably not the right verb, right onto the page. So when we had 5th color covers of Ghost Rider back in the 90s, it meant that it was using CMYK plus a 5th spot color. This is going to take 5 minutes. I don't care. I love this comic book. So the way that Jordi Belair was coloring the initial arc, which was so brilliant on Leonardo Romero, I want to say is the artist, is she was making it look like digitally her colors were not quite lined up to each other. So it created this slight vibrating stereoscopic thing that it would look like if you got a newspaper or a comic book where all the plates didn't line up, it had that slight shadow to the side of where the colors are. So usually like one side looks like a little bit more like pink and one side looks a little bit more blue because the plates were not totally lined up. So one run of the color on this building would be shifted this way a little bit and one would be shifted that way. I love it because Adriano Lucas found a way to do that without aping Jordi Belair here, and it seemed to me, I could be mistaken, it seemed like he only did it when there was motivated light sources. So not when they're just like outside and there's general light, but when there was like light on somebody specific cast by a specific light that we could find in the panel, that's when he did the effect. So cool. now we come to the story. I don't know. I told you it was going to take 5 minutes. This puts all of the birds on the back foot. It starts in the middle of Cass having to investigate something by herself, and Batman drops in to be like, you're doing a fine job, basically, but it was cooler than that. Which, again, better Cass scene than I got in all of Batgirl for the past 6 months. And then we don't know why. We don't know why they were investigating this. And then Oracle/Batgirl says Barbara Gordon is like, you got to split up. And they're like, okay. And she's like, it's going to be dangerous. And they're like, okay. And then it was dangerous. But it works for me because it gives them all bits of business. This page, I loved it so much. Cass gets paired with Sin, who is Black Canary's younger sister, and Sin is like trying to have a moment with Cass, but Cass is like so mission focused that she's like, I'm not having a moment, we're on the mission. And then Sin surprises her from behind. We see this little sliver of the surprise with the eyes wide at the bottom, and then we discover that the surprise was just telegraphed there because you could see Sin's hair in the background, but you don't know what it is over the shoulder. The surprise is that Sin is giving her a hug and saying thank you. Mwah. Beautiful writing for Cassandra Cain. Hilarious writing for Big Barda. The Big Barda sequence in this book had me rolling on the floor. Great writing. I just love this book. It might be the best team comic book out right now. How's it not my top 12? Because I didn't love the arc that was happening right at the beginning of the year, but it's going to come back, so I'm obsessed with it. Okay. Oh, boy. Okay. So this is Black Ritual, the Book of Nyx, #1. First of all, can we once again point out that you do not need a vertical or a horizontal cover banner and a slash at the corner cover banner, both proclaiming the same thing. Whoever your graphic designer is, Todd, just pass the note. But the other thing is, this is actually written by Thomas Healy, who's the editor-in-chief of Todd McFarlane's comic books, which, you know, he I guess would be the person who would be my direct supervisor when I start editing Spawn. And this got art from Nat Jones, which is really, really good. They colored themselves here, and lettering from Roll Design. And the end note actually says Nat Jones had been drawing Spawn at the point this character was introduced and had always wanted to come back to it and got into a conversation with Thomas Healy about it. And that's how this book came about. Totally dig that. The other thing I totally dig is that this is one of the rare Spawn books where it was like, we are referencing a specific thing. It even gave me a Spawn issue to pull out my compendiums and go look at, and to say, we're going to pick up Nyx's story from there. Now, Nyx is now the queen of hell or something. So this is going to track where she has been over the course of 200 issues of Spawn to see how she got from here to present. I'm really into that. Personally, I didn't think that this particular issue was all that substantial, but that's fine. It had to ground me in like who she was because I hadn't read Spawn 164 before. So I'll give it a pass for that. The art was really good. I think the writing was really solid. It oriented me to this place. And it did this cool trick where I can only think of this character as this sympathetic young woman and not as the queen of hell or whatever she is right now. So it did its job. It reoriented my brain to be like, how are we going to get there? I loved how they just did that in Violator. Violator, tremendously great series written by Marco Andreyko with our different artists in every one. So if this is the way that Spawn is going to handle its origin series, like kind of like breaking it down issue by issue in these miniseries of all their side characters, I'm in, man. This is the Spawn bullshit that I want to read. So I'm not telling you this was amazing. I'm telling you, I think it did its job, and it did its job well enough that I will be reading the next issue. You know, the Moment of Krisis today was almost about tariffs and the effect of tariffs on comic books. The first, sorry, gotta get my water. The first comic creator to come out and say that they're raising their prices was Todd Father. But Todd Father has kept the price of every one of his books at $2.99 for a decade. So they're the cheapest major label books out there. And he's upgraded the production in that time. And before that, for the 5 years prior to that, they'd only been $2.50. So he's up to $4 now, while other people are hitting for $5 or $6. And honestly, Todd, you deserve it. Okay. I fully support you raising your book prices. I don't love it because I have to pay more money. But if that's what it takes to have the Spawn universe great now, Thomas Healy, if you want to talk about that editing job, I'm available. Get in the comments, Thomas. Okay. Blood Wars. This cover was good enough that I did try to find it, but I think it's one of these like Kickstarter comics that's like ephemeral. Ooh, I'm getting the low internet notice, so I'm just gonna take a peek at the chat and see if anybody's saying the internet is slow. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody say that I'm getting jerky, but let me know if that happens. Anyway, so this cover looks really cool, but you never know with these Kickstarter books if the drapes are gonna match the curtains, are gonna match the carpet. You just don't know. So I am willing to go and find this, and if I can find it digital after this week, I will come back and add it to my beginning reads. Cherry, this was supposed to be out a couple of weeks ago, and then it wasn't, and then it said it was out this week. Was it out this week? I don't know, because it's not available digitally. Max, can I just have Max come on the stream and talking about this one? Do I have to really talk about this? God damn it. Okay. I love Dazzler. I love Lila Cheney. I have a shirt of her. I should wear sometime. I love Luna Snow. I love music and comic books. I love somebody who can draw a guitar in an anatomically correct way. What I didn't love was this horrible comic book written by Jason Liu, who needs a court order barring him from writing Dazzler. The art was fine by Rafael Loureiro and Rory Coleman. But here's the thing. If you're going to say, I'm doing this one shot, right? It's a one shot. Marvel, one. You got one shot. Don't give away your shot, Jason Liu. So you got a one shot, and you've got these two characters who we've never seen interact before between Dazzler and Luna Snow. And your plot is Dazzler's losing her hair from stress. So Luna Snow is angry at her for not being nice enough and coming to their signing. And then this band with Angar the Streamer is trying to summon a demon. Like, that's not good enough. That's not a good enough reason to have a one shot, and especially maybe the only time we're going to get to see these characters interact. And also, you're going to get Dazzler put back in a black box and sealed shut for years because of this stupid bullshit that you're putting. But I can't put it all in the script because there's editors involved in this. And once again, I will call out an editor on my stream. Martin Bureau, what are you doing? This concept was not good enough to greenlight as a one-shot. Tom Brevoort, conductor of X. As the conductor of X, I think you need to adjust the timing of your baton because this music is sounding cacophonous to me. There is no reason I could ever recommend. Oh, and Ghost Spider's in it too. Again, how cool. Another one of our young female musician characters together in a book that we'd love to see. No, because they don't do anything cool musical. They have no relation to each other. We don't do anything with the relationships or request their characters. Literally the only two things that's happened here are that Dazzler's losing her hair and that some anonymous band tries to summon a demon in, by the way, a total repeat of the plot of Magic #2. And you're editing all these books, so you should know that. And so the thing is, the Dazzler losing hair thing was so confusing and hurtful to me as somebody with great hair because I couldn't even tell if we were supposed to think that she had like the mutant regeneration sickness or if she was just stressed or what. Like the script was so bad. And then it has all these characters like Domino. I'm glitching. The AI doesn't know how to get angry enough. There's all these characters like Strong Guy and Shark Girl and Domino, and it kind of expects them to all just be stupid in order for this plot to happen, which I get it. Like, if you have a book with a big establishing cast of X characters and you need there to be a threat and Dazzler and Luna Snow to respond to it, cool, I understand that. But be better. And the thing is, I've read good Jason Liu comic books, so I'm not out here saying Jason Liu's a failure at life. I'm just saying, Dazzler, you have to have an approach. You have to have a reason to be writing. If you just write her as like, and by the way, I had another one of these cringe like lyrics at the end of the Dazzler song. Oh boy. Speaking of things you could hire me to do for you. Y'all heard the song I wrote for Absolute Martian Manhunter last week, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was good. I think it was good. And I don't ever think my songs are good. But you need an approach for Dazzler. You need why is she choosing to be on tour? Why is she choosing to sign up for this festival? You like really need to understand who she is intrinsically. Just saying like, I'm a pop star because I'm a pop star doesn't get you anything for this character that's going to make us all continue to read the character. Which is like, if you want to write her as Lady Gaga, but where's the why? What is the motivation? And that's been missing from all this. There's kind of almost invisible thread of like, she thinks it's good for mutants if she's seen out there normalizing being a mutant in the public eye, but I have to work so hard to uncover that it's just, I'm so sorry. Please don't read this. It was literally a 0.5 out of 5. There's nothing redeeming to me. Nothing. I don't read Cruel Kingdom. I dropped it. It's an anthology book from Oni that's in the style of EC Comics. Greg Pak even wrote a story in this one, and I do highly recommend the first issue, which we know that I loved, which had a Greg Pak story that I'm still thinking about. But I just, after 2 issues that I really hated, I couldn't. I think this is the last issue of it anyway. Okay, I didn't read Daredevil Cold Day in Hell by Charles Soule and Steve McNiven because I do not read, or at least I do not spend money on alternate universe Marvel comics if I can help it, because this is like an old man Daredevil effectively. I'll maybe read it when it hits Marvel Unlimited, but no. Okay. So then we come to Deadpool. So I thought this was going to be my pick of the week. I'm not saying it was bad. I think here's a really nuanced thing that I'm probably going to communicate badly. I did not like the first 2 issues of this Deadpool series by Cody Ziegler. And then I fell in love with it afterwards. And I legendarily am obsessed with it. The reason I didn't like it is because it was trying to make everybody on every panel be quippy. And I think Deadpool, when you're writing him that quippy, needs some room around him for that to like echo in the space. It's like when you clap in an empty room and you hear the clap back, like you need a little bit of room around Deadpool for his jokes to land. And in the first 2 issues, Cody Ziegler had Princess, the symbiote dog, being so funny in the same panels with Deadpool that there was no room for like the Deadpool bits to breathe. And I was exhausted. This issue felt like that again to me. And part of it is that it had Solemn, who we know from Krakoa, who's this pretty deadly, very sexually voracious character who likes all the finer pleasures in life. And Cody Ziegler is playing him super, super funny from the second he comes onto panel. He's playing him pretty much as Phantom X. And I think there's a difference between Phantom X and Solemn. And I just get very annoyed with like this idea, like every 4 years, we need a new bisexual character who's going to just be like tiki funny and like flirt with everybody. Like give them some dimension, right? So I just felt like Solemn was being played just as silly and funny as Deadpool, as Ellie, as Taskmaster, as Princess. And at that point, we had 5 people on panel all being that silly in every panel, and a very long Logan cameo at the beginning, which I understand why it happened, because Logan had the information on where to find Solemn, and we wanted to contrast Deadpool now thinking of himself as a parent, talking to Logan, who he knows to be a parent, to be like, I'm going to protect my daughter the same way you would protect your daughter. And I get that. And I know why Cody Ziegler did it. I just think give Deadpool the space to breathe that he's had for the last 7 or 8 issues, and your book will be amazing. Because it has been amazing. Because Miles Morales is not that funny. The people they were fighting in the second arc are not that funny. Or there was only Ellie and not Deadpool, right? Like, so I just think Deadpool needs some space. I'm not saying this is a bad comic book. I'm still really into it. I just am a little worried that it's feeling as busy as it did in the first few issues, which did have the main villain, Death Grip, who they're trying to get back to, was the villain of the first arc, and I didn't like the first arc as much. I'm a little nervous that we're going to go back to me not liking as much. I didn't read Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe One Last Time by Cullen Bunn and, oh, I can't say that artist name. I'm so sorry. Jalabor Talajic. I'm so sorry. I will try to learn. And Lee Luffridge. I've read a little bit of the first one. It's just not for me. I just am not here for characters being murdered, but I bet it's going to look really good. Okay, so now we, oh no. First we come to Galaxy of Madness, which I don't read. Cool sci-fi book, hard sci-fi, but a little bit funny. But Michael Avon Oming on art, and those things don't go in a great stack for me. I don't love that Jenga tower of elements, but you might, and it's written really cool. It's just not to my taste. And then Gotcha Man, which you all finally explained to me, and I know is, again, like a media property I'm not into, but I'm happy that it exists, and that's a very cool cover. Okay. I told you I didn't like the pulls much this week. So there's this very, very famous G.I. Joe issue that was the original silent mission. And the reason that Larry Hama did it silent is because he was behind deadline, or the book was behind deadline so much that they didn't have time for a lettering pass. So he just wrote it as silent. That was actually re-released this week. It's this, G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, 1982, number 21. And it is industry-wide famous and beloved for being such a great comic book. So Skybound had this idea of, in between issues of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, let's do 5 silent one-shots. And this is in Real American Hero universe, not Energon universe, by 5 different creative teams that are totally silent. And the first one up is Phil Hester doing Beachhead. Here's the thing. Phil Hester has a very Mike Mignola adjacent kind of art. It's very blocky. It's not super expressive. Personally, I do not like it. I know other people do. But if we're talking about an artist who can communicate like emotion and clear action without any kind of narration or dialogue or anything, Phil Hester would not be in my top 600 choices. He just cannot do the thing that this guy, and he wrote it too. So like Beachhead touches down in the city, he gets wounded, some kids take care of him, and then he gets past all the alley vipers and he gets the kids out too, which is really interesting. And I could tell that there are moments of emotional resonance here, but this story needed a script. It did not hit the remit of Silent Mission, because you could tell that there were things being said and we needed to know what was being said to follow it. There were so many pages that I just was like this page I kind of get. He tips over this refrigerator. He goes head over heels. He almost drops his gun. Upside down, he gets his gun. Then he's on the other side of the refrigerator and he shoots. But then the kids at the top of the stairs are like, come up here. Like, I can follow that. But there were so many pages that I could not follow. And I try hard, y'all. I do not read these things in like a minute. I sit and I interrogate the comics. So if you can't communicate the plot of your silent comic to me, you have failed. So I had to give this a 0.5 out of 5 because it failed. Sorry. Because the next one is Jinx, my favorite G.I. Joe, and it's by Dan Waters. So it better be good, because you're going to see me lose my chickens next week if there's a Jinx comic that is silent and it's not good. Okay. I probably should have reread. So here's one of the things I'm thinking about. I might just start rereading one issue of old original 1982 G.I. Joe every time some new G.I. Joe book comes out, because eventually I'll have read a lot of issues. And then I'll get even more FOMO that I didn't back that Kickstarter. By the way, I will see your comments when we get when we get to J, because that's the halfway. So we're almost there. We're almost there. So if you want me to see things, now's the time. This one, Godzilla Heist. If you remember, I really liked the first issue of this, kind of despite myself. I really love the story of Van Jensen. So clever that it's like this Ocean's 11, but there's also an individual guy who figured out he doesn't need Ocean's 11. He just needs Ocean 2 because he can get Godzilla to appear wherever he wants to using basically meteorology technology to act as a red herring so he can steal the thing that he wants. The tagline here, it was the perfect crime. They just need the perfect distraction. Great cover, by the way. Cover by, they don't even say in the credits page. Great job. Love that for us. And the art by Kelly Ramsey is like a little weird and scratchy, but I found it really appealing because of how it was colored by Heather Breckel. This, however, is a drop for me because this issue didn't keep the promise that was made to me in the first issue that it was going to be a heist comic. It wasn't a heist comic. It was, they flew in a helicopter and it was all about how they were good at helicopter flying and then how they were going to crash the helicopter and survive with Godzilla stomping around. Like, no, I didn't ask for that. I asked, you called it Godzilla Heist. It's not Godzilla versus helicopter. So because I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying I have a very marginal interest in Godzilla to begin with. And so since this did not keep up the Ocean's 11 vibe, which I liked, it's a drop. I really wanted to read this going, we're going under, drowning you. I really want, we're falling forever. I really want to read it, falling forever. I've got to, anyway, I don't want to copyright strike. I really wanted to read it. It's apparently by some cool YouTuber person who also does comics, but I looked and I couldn't find if it was digital. But get at me, YouTuber. I mean, you don't need me. I'm sure if you're a famous YouTuber, you got like orders of magnitude more hits than me. But are they singing Going Under about your comic? I don't know if they are. I did read Grim Tales of Terror. Almost I didn't. I did. So this is Zenoscope's anthology book, but it's one horror story per book. And it's based on folklore horror. And this one is posted on something called the Dybbuk box, where basically bad people get haunted by a Dybbuk. And if you don't put them in the box, then they will continue to haunt you. I did like this a little. Part of it because I think the art by Daniel Manet was pretty solid, especially with the colors from Juan Manuel Rodriguez. And I liked, you know how I always love, I'm like, I don't like reading a book with an asshole in it because I just want them to die at the end. Well, spoilers, this book was about an asshole and he dies at the end. And so I am like, yeah, I love that. But I don't think this did as much with the Dybbuk, like the evil spirit, as the past few issues have done. I think this book is the most successful, and some of the issues have been very successful when it really leans into the mythology of what this folk horror creature is. And this book was much more about the asshole than the folk horror creature. It was good, and I was hooked, and it was a page turner. But then I got to the end, and when the guy died, I was like, oh, I kind of wanted to like know more about it. So I think if you like this kind of thing, if you just like random one-shot horror based on folk horror and just the people get their just desserts, this series has surprisingly been delivering. I like it a lot more than I thought I was going to like it. I liked issue, I think it's the last issue where I was like, this is amazing. I think I really liked issue 2 and 3. Issue 4, meh. Helverine, my pansexual murder son, Daken. Okay, we got to talk about art first. Raphael Yanko, who I love from Greg Pak's Darth Vader, you need to see. First of all, just this image of Daken drowning, which has resonance if you know Daken, which you would if you were a Patreon subscriber and had read my guide to Daken and all of the things that have ever happened to him, because Rick Remender has Wolverine drown Daken in a shallow pool of water in Genosha in issue 34 of Uncanny X-Force. Spoilers for a book that's 15 years old. And so he is thinking about that. And I love how his body falls across the panels, which immediately like gives you motion and tells your face and your eyes, your face where to go as it takes you diagonally down the page. But then the way Yanko drew Mephisto and Brian Valenza colored Mephisto, and like the body horror of Mephisto just taking apart Daken's body over and over and over again as Daken tries to have this argument with him. I loved it. It was so creepy. It was so cool. And it does resolve into a fight with Mephisto that like feels motivated. Like a lot of times heroes are going to fight Mephisto and you're like, well, what's going to happen here? Like they're going to lose. But because of how the art dealt with the physicality of Daken, or I should say Akihiro and Mephisto here, by the time they fought, it actually like made sense and it resolved in a satisfying way. Ultimately, this is kind of an epilogue to the first arc. And so this is issue 5. I think we're now heading into a second arc based on what the cliffhanger here was. I really liked it because this felt very motivated by who Akihiro is, what his past is, what his traumas are, and the uneasiness he has with the idea of having another driver, the Ghost Rider, in his body and having some kind of payback that he owes to Mephisto. So it really, really worked for me. I loved the art. It was almost my pick of the week, honestly. But all that said, I just love Akihiro / Daken. So I have a weak spot for him. And so that's part of why I did the guide for this week. So I wanted to finally have a guide that I could summarize Daken's history in and talk about this comic covering. Okay. Hornsby and Halo was my Image top pick of the week. And now it's a drop. How did we get here? How did we get here? If you remember the first couple of issues that I reviewed of this, my complaint was like, nothing's happening. It's just these kids running. They're running, they're running, they're running. And like, they're an angel and a demon that were sent from heaven to hell to be on earth and not know that they were an angel and a demon to kind of like live the life on earth, which is very cool because it's kind of like what God did with Jesus, his only begotten son. So I'm really into that as a theme. The art is really good. I love all the art from Peter Snaresberg, colored by John Callies. But this basically, they meet their like overseer, their chaperone, their big angelic / demonic monster, but friendly guy who's keeping an eye on him. And the entire comic is just them running away from him. Like it's the whole book. It's the only thing that happens. And I'm sorry, but if I'm showing up and I'm paying for your comic book and all you can do with your characters is have them run and then run and then run, there's no plot. Eventually, they are like, okay, we trust you since we have nowhere else to run away. And he's like, good, because I'm here to watch over you. End of issue. Like there's no plot. I just think if you're an indie book and it's your 5th issue and there's no plot in your script, go back for another pass and put some plot in your script. I don't read Hyde Street, which is the horror book by Jeff Johns. He got me saying Jeff instead of Geoff, but in my mind, I'm still saying Geoff. The horror book from Jeff Johns for his Ghost Machine. Maybe I'll try it again now that I'm dropping Hornsby and Halo. Look, I'll read it when it gets to trade or if it's like on Global Comics, but I can't. There's been 1.5 good issues out of 5, and it looks so good. And I love Peter Tomasi, but you need a plot. Look, you have to understand if you're watching this show for the first time for some reason, I don't usually hate the books this much. You have to talk to the people in the comments and in the chat. I am here to love comics, and there are comics that I loved here. There are few and far between this week. I'm so sorry. This is called I Was a Fashion School Serial Killer. So I've read some books by this team, Doug Wagner and Daniel Hilliard. Before they did vinyl, they did plastic. Usually they're interested in a specific medium that their serial killer works in. And then they write a really terrible comic book about it. I've always dropped their books after a #1, but I thought, you know what? Maybe this will be different. Maybe it'll be different. So this time they're serial killers in fashion school. There you go. That's all you need to know because that's all that happens in this goddamn comic book. First of all, it starts with somebody almost being sexually assaulted, but because it's trying to give us like a character who we're not going to be sad that they get killed, the sexual assaulter. But I'm sorry, if that's the first thing your male creative team, although there is I believe a woman colorist on this, Michelle Madsen, didn't really like your colors, Michelle. If that's the first thing your book can think of is like, let's put women in peril to make our female look cool, like fuck you, just fuck you. Basically. Then I hate this cross-eyed art. Why are their eyes so close together? I hate every single likeness in the whole book. Also, it's written like all the characters are 12 years old. Like they get to fashion school and all the people in the fashion school are making fun of the main character for having made her own clothes. That's not how fashion school works, you fucking morons. If you're in fashion school and you've made your own clothes and they look cool, everybody thinks you're cool. And then they're in the cafeteria of this fashion. It's a college, a university. And they're like making fun of somebody for bringing their own lunch because the cafeterias at fashion schools are so known for their bomb-ass food. Every single decision in this comic was utterly moronic. I'm so happy these people have fans. I'm so happy they're on their 4th serial killer comic in a row. And as somebody who likes serial killer comics, keep making more serial killer comics. This comic was terrible. Okay. Oh, and the one thing I liked one thing, and I guess the colorist was responsible for this, so I will bump your credit up a notch, Michelle Madsen. The art teacher of their class always wore these really cool like pattern dresses and caftans, and I really like when colorists take a pattern and they it's not an illustrated pattern, it's like a pattern, like a plaid or something, and then they like put it onto the thing that the artist drew. I assume that's from the colorist and not from the artist. I could be mistaken. I just enjoyed that. I came back to this page a lot, not because of cleavage, but because I actually just really liked how the pattern was on the dress. There you go. I said one positive thing. And now we have the Immortal Thor. This was fun. It almost got to perfection. It got too close to the sun and it was wearing the wings with the wax and the wings melted, but that's a different mythology. So Thor is in this maze in this city. And he's trying to get out of the maze, and he's there with Executioner and this fast dude. I forget what the fast dude's name is. And Ewing, who maybe had taken a nap just prior to the script, wrote a comic that reads perfectly front to back or back to front. And you can switch. You can read a couple pages in this way and then start reading the other direction, because every page could go in either direction. Poison Ivy said it was doing a flip book a couple months ago, and it kind of just totally failed. It was basically just two half stories that had the same final page in the middle, and it didn't really work as a flip book. This works as a flip book. I read it from the beginning to the end, and then I read it from the end to the beginning, and then I read it from the beginning to the end, but I kept going back a page and then forward a page over and over again, and it worked every time, except the last page doesn't quite track to the page before it, which is kind of a bummer because the last page is the first page if you read it backwards. But it was really fun. I just like it. So I spent 17 minutes reading this one issue. That's value. That's a comic that made me linger and interrogate and examine. I think the tracking of it was a little bit broken in the last couple of pages. And I will say this motif here with the two arrows, basically they established early on that one arrow is backwards and one is forwards. I mean, they're arrows, duh. But the coins in the arrow mean backwards or forwards. They're so huge as a design element, and they eat up so much space, and there's so much white space around them. I do like that it made this kind of like choose your own adventure square panel in the middle where it was like, ooh, which way are we going to go from here? But as they still kept being on every page as I went through the issue, and I didn't get another page from it, I was just like, oh, they're so huge. If they had just been like 2/3 of that size, but that's not a problem with the comic book. Personally, my design sensibility was slightly offended. This was cool though, and I think you could buy it and just think it was cool and not have read all of all of Thor. I think it would work for you regardless. All right, we're almost to me getting to see your comments. Drink. Let's see. Ironheart, bad chemistry. Well, what else is there to say, really? Look, okay. I can't, having read comics that truly offended me with their terribleness this week, I actually can't come down as hard on this as I originally did in my notes. It's written by John Jennings, who's like this really cool academic, like PhD. You look up his biography, really cool dude. Art from Jethro Morales, who did a great job. Colors from Andrew Dalhouse, who I love, and letters from Ariana Mayer. Here's the thing. Ironheart, for whatever reason, doesn't have her own series right now. She's about to have her own Disney Plus series, but we can't get like we can't get a mini series. But I guess if they know the market won't support that, then the market won't support that. So John Jennings has to basically cram this whole Ironheart story that continues from a Pride anthology story, which I endorse because the Pride anthology stories should count for something. So I love that he continued here, but boy, was I confused until I was like, oh, it's continued from that Pride story. And it's actually pretty substantial. Like it gives Ironheart a villain specifically for her. She's then in turn connected to a villain that's from an Iron Man lore. We go back in Iron Man lore. The art is really good. I like this page in specific because we know that I like when the action moves us in one direction and the page layout moves us in the other direction. So I love that Ironheart getting clocked towards the left here, but then the page sweeps up to the right. Really love that. I think if you like Ironheart, it's fine. I think I've softened on it overnight since I read it yesterday. It's just, it was like 30 pages. It just had a lot to do in 30 pages to like basically tell a whole arc. And I love that. Let's compress arcs into one issue. But just as a one shot, it's kind of like, well, where are we going? Like now we have this new nemesis for Ironheart. Cool. Where will we see more of this? Where can I find her next? What, like, I don't know. It just left me like wanting. And I kind of just wish that it had been given enough room to be a 3-issue miniseries, like as part of, we have this One World Under Doom. We couldn't squeeze it in under One World Under Doom. So I guess none of my problems with it are like curricular to the actual book. They're all about like the circumstances surrounding the book, which I guess means it was an okay book, and I need to go back and improve my rating a little bit. It's Jeff, da 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 da. If Jeff needs a jingle, has anybody written a jingle for Kelly Thompson yet? I would love to be that person, but it's not the jingle I just sang. It would be finer work than that. So this is part 2 of a 2-part gripping cliffhanger by Kelly Thompson and Akihiro about trying to get Jeff to take some pills because he has a rash. Look, it's just adorable. I don't need a minute to tell you this is adorable. It's adorable. That took a second. It's just adorable. It's on Marvel Unlimited. I love Gwenpool, and I love Akihiro drawing Gwenpool, and I like Jeff too. And I like how much personality Akihiro gives Jeff without anthropomorphizing him fully. Like he doesn't have people face here, but we know what he's responding to, and it's that she's going to put the cone of shame on him. And I think that is hilarious. Totally hilarious. And that's for free to read if you have Marvel Limited, and there were no J's. Surprise! So that is the end of the first half of the alphabet today, which means I get to talk to you all, which means I probably want to put my glasses back on because I am going blind in my old age. Okay. So now I'm going to scroll all the way back up to Absolute Green Lantern, and we're going to see what everybody said about all this. Oh, and some of you asked cool comments. Richard Fearing asked what X team would I want to be a part of? Not Ecstatics. I mean, Generation X, because I was that age at that time, I guess. But if I had to pick a modern X-Men team to be on, I don't know. I don't really like boats, so not the Marauders. I don't know. I want to be on whatever team. I want to be on Dazzler's Road Crew, but not written by Jason Liu. There you go. Tyler Bear loves me, keep being me, going to quick dinner. Well, I appreciate you stopping by. Not as indeed the DM Rogue Gambit cover. Forgot about it. So Novarg and I do have the same one. Kevin saying a longtime fan, greeting from the Netherlands. As we know, I have a lot of fans in the Netherlands. This has been confirmed many times over, and we love them. Okay, let's see. People talking about Reversal, saying Skylar Patridge is so good. I didn't care for Mariko Tamaki's backup on Markway's Phantom Zone story in Action Comics. Agreed. It wasn't my fave. But Skylar Patridge's art kept me reading it. Agreed. Was my fave. Love it. That murdered out yellow background looks great, though. Yeah, the colors. I forget now the name of the colorist in that book, Reversal, but the colors are a huge, huge part. And that's why I try to credit colors. And even since we've been doing the show this past quarter, I feel like I've really grown in my ability to talk about the colors. And that's why I talk about them, because I want to grow in my ability to colors. By the way, it's Kelly Fitzpatrick. And that's why I say interrogate your comics. Start having opinions about these things. Having opinions will help you have opinions. You know, one of the things about Duolingo, tangent, I've been doing a lot of Duolingo lately. I used to speak French decently, but I was always afraid to speak French out loud. It was like embarrassing. And I wouldn't do it alone in my room. And then you would only get to speak it like in class. But then I loved French so much. And then like when I got to Paris, I was so excited to speak French, but they were all like, no, because I don't have a great accent in French. And if I just had a reason to speak it more, I think I would have been so good because I understood French really well and I read French really well. So I've been doing Duolingo a lot lately as just like a brain thing for me every night to like breathe from the comics, do something else. And my accent's getting so much better so fast because I do like 10 speaking exercises a night. So I speak French for like 20 minutes a night. Of course I'm getting better. It's the same thing I tell people who are like, I don't know, I might want to learn how to play guitar. I'm like, just play the guitar 20 minutes a day. You will eventually get better if you keep playing it 20 minutes a day. Thinking about it does not count. Listening to it does not count. So I think I'm getting better at talking about colors because I talk about colors. So I encourage you all to talk about colors. Yeah, and Adam, we know that I love black colors. Love. James Abel, Absolute Green Lantern, not a big fan of the white border on the pages. How becomes the all-new Venom? I don't know what that means. How become the all-new Venom? That's new. Oh, I guess it's a joke about like we were then going directly to all-new Venom. Hal was all-new Venom. I kind of get it. Okay. Cruel Angel, Absolute Green Lantern. Abenstar looks like who put a town on my parking spot. First Blood vibes. Small town folks just have to keep harassing strangers. Didn't feel sorry for any of them. Yeah, it just didn't. It's funny. I saw a lot of comments online after I read it of like, well, I trust in Al Ewing. I'm like, but do we trust in Al Ewing? Like, it's so tropey to start. And I just don't think he's really hit for me that much in the past year. So I'm like, I don't have this like overriding belief that like, oh, all those small town people, that's going to pay off. Like, no, it might just be bad. It might just be bad. Reversals on Hoopla if you have a library card. So that now you have no excuse not to read it. Absolute Superman, another great issue, trying to show the nurture versus nature. Great point, James, of John and Martha had on Clark. Fifth of Jack Gaming says, I have to say Absolute Superman really impressed me. And overall, I was super happy with this issue. It's the first time I ran into a book I enjoyed. You've never enjoyed a book before? Clearly, that's missing a word. Super job. I've yet to read an Al Ewing book I like. That's me with Jeff Lemire. I probably should read Immortal Hulk to see what all the fuzz is about. I'm trying to think what is like okay, everybody, think hard. Ooh, I get to put up my new banner. We're going to put up the new banner. No wrong answers. What Al Ewing book in your mind was the Al Ewing book that was flawless? You're not saying that I'm going to think it was flawless or that Super Job was going to think it's flawless. Just you. There are no wrong answers. So everybody say that in the chat, and then we will have some great recommendations for them to try. Oh no, did it scroll down? Oh no, it didn't. Okay. Always an instigator, always excited for the potential of Venditti, how rebirth Omni because of Sandoval's art. Yeah, Sandoval. Wow. Sandoval's, he didn't come out of nowhere. Like I knew he was good, but I didn't know he's that good. Also, I like Venditti. I think Venditti wrote an amazing X-Men Manowar. I think he's really reliable. I wish he would write more books. Can we get a Venditti Iron Man run? Possibly. Love him. Fifth of Jack Gaming loves the art for all new Venom. I dropped Venom back when Arm V and Ram V and Ewing juggling. Yeah, that was a rough spot. You can just pick up all new Venom. Like it works fine from number 1. And now the number 1's on Marvel Unlimited. So go and do it. Yeah. What's up with 90% Hal Jordan and Absolute GL? Obviously long form storytelling, but I'm sick of Hal. We all know, Reaper, that Hal is my least favorite comic book character, but it's not just Hal. It's definitely going to involve all of them. And I don't want to spoil it, but it's very clearly not going to be just about Hal. The pitch for all new Venom feels disrespectful. I won't disagree. Gomez's action in all new Venom is really good, says Adam Messenger. But I don't think he draws humans well. His character moments always look weird to me. That's fair. That's fair. Reaper just read Ewing's US Avengers run. I love Tony Ho, but the stories weren't good. Mostly Secret Empire tie-ins, then a Skull Archie world. Yikes. Yeah, and Always an Instigator, speaking of Archie, says, so sad we never got a 3rd Varsity Deluxe edition for Wade's Archie. And by the way, Reaper's telling you all to like. I'm not a big like, smash that like button, smash that like button, smash that like button. I don't always do that, but I will say, last week, the likes were slightly lower than they had been in previous weeks, which is fine. I know we were up against the Epic poll, which this is the last day. You can go vote on Epic reprints. So go do that in near mint condition. But the algorithm notices these things. And if the videos start having less likes week after week, it will promote it to less people. So as much as I hate begging for likes, I'm not begging. I'm just saying, if you like it, like it. Okay. Brandon Riley says, I feel like Al Ewing comes up with great ideas and then turns out some great issues, but often gets convoluted. Yeah, he's starting. That's the feeling I'm having about him. He was one where like everything felt so tight and understandable when he was like on these short-lived series and he didn't have the clout to run for 40 issues. And now that we're running for 40 and 50 issues, even on Immortal Hulk, I just feel like sometimes the plot has got like a little lost in the sauce. I think there's a reason why some authors break out on shorter series and then like they don't have shorter series anymore. I'm like, well, we're dealing with a different version of that author now. Like Tom King. Tom King broke out largely on the strength of Omega Man 12 issues and Vision 12 issues. And then he was on Batman for 85 issues, right? So like it's not the same thing to write an 85 issue ongoing run. And that's a problem I have with Ram V, who I love and greatly respect as a writer. I generally like Ram V with a limited amount of issues. Always an Instigator, please tell me I'm watching season 3 of Love on the Spectrum. I watched season 1 of Love on the Spectrum. It was very, very cute. I don't tend to like reality TV unless it's about art. So I love The Glow Up. I love the one, I forget what it's called, Blown Away on Netflix with the glass blowers. Oh my gosh, do I love that. And of course I love Drag Race. So watching a reality show about people dating is real hard to get me to sit in one place. Okay. Batgirl. Cruel Angel, the dreaded 6-issue arc is finally over. Now what? Hopefully not another drawn-out story. Here's the thing. My love is, I have no object permanence. My love is available to Batgirl starting with issue number 7. If issue number 7 clicks, that's why I read all the comics that I read. But the Batgirl covers are so pretty, and darn, so are the interiors. The interiors are amazing. It's the script. Just the script I have a problem with. Just the script. Always an Instigator. Everything that Tate is trying to do with Cass has already been done better, and Tiny and in Detective Comics, and obviously better. Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, if you've got a character that's like a super fan favorite character, and then in a recent run, somebody like crushed it and everybody loved that, it's hard. Like that's a hard task you got to now take that character and like focus a whole book on them and figure out how to make that sing. Brandon Riley saying, I've actually enjoyed the Batgirl series, though I agree the first arc is being dragged out more, and I absolutely love Miyazawa's art. Yeah, no complaints about arts. But Eric Garza agreeing, Birds of Prey is very special. Max Appleman saying it looks rad. I never read Birds of Prey. Just pick up the #1 issue, Max. You know me. I would not lead you astray. The #1 issue of Birds of Prey is a perfect #1 script. It is perfect. Nobody has written a superhero #1 script that good since then in the 2 year and 6 months that have happened since then. Absolute Superman came close. But I think Kelly Thompson's Birds of Prey #1 is like I put that in the same category as Four Kids That Walk in the Back. I don't get any kind of commission. I just tell you that I like this all the time. I think it's like that good. It's just textbook great. People are apparently loving Birds of Prey because guess what? I love Birds of Prey. Sure, okay, let's keep going. Batgirl, don't be effing around with Crisis and the Crushers reading time. Yes. Evening from the UK. Hello, Noah Horn. Book of Nyx. That's right. Raven. That's so Raven. That's Raven. Yeah, with the purple hair. I mean, you give a girl purple hair. We're all dark with dark streaks. We're all going to think of Raven from Teen Titans. Nat Jones 2-3 issues of Nyx and Hell was really good back in that Spawn 140 to 149 years, and that's why Nat Jones wanted to come back. They were like, I have unfinished business with this character, which I think is cool. I love that an artist is like, I had more to draw. Something about that is like so cool to me. Novark hates grounded designs and comic book covers. It stopped me from buying comics. I'm so glad Rebirth was over and DC started with minimal design covers. Oh, you mean like crowded, not grounded? Yeah, I think there's something to branding, right? But that Rebirth swoosh was like oppressive. It just took up so much space. I love branding that's like a really clear, obvious brand mark that sends a symbol. I don't like when a whole cover is framed. I like a design motif. So I do kind of like the Ultimate books because the design motif is that the cover is just white, that it's just framed in white, which actually lets the art breathe. Yeah, I think the banner on a banner on the Spawn books is just killing me. Concert of Champions #1, James Abel says, Alexa, play Let's Get the Band Back Together. Wasn't the best, but Dupe had a good cameo. Magic #2 did it better. See, you thought the same thing I thought. Cruel Angel, Concert of Champions, poor Dazzler. I hope we get another limited series for her. Nice that they let Gwen sit in with the band. What does Concert of Champions exist? Why does it exist? How does it exist? When does it exist? Nobody knows the answers to these questions. Logan Wayne, unless something more pressing comes up, please save the tariffs moment of crisis for next week because I'd like to hear my thoughts. Okay, well, we'll save tariffs for whatever week I don't get myself into internet controversy. I have to go check Blue Sky to see if I've been canceled yet. The exasperation before talking about the comics you don't like is hilarious. It's real. Like I'm not premeditating that. Sometimes I see the cover come up on my screen here and I'm like, oh, sweet Lord, give me the strength. Oh, we'll never be royals. Kenneth Crayley still needs to read my books from last week, but DC so far. So something I want to start showing on the show, and I haven't figured out a good way to show it. I keep track of all my ratings every week and have forever. So I have a running 6-month average, which I think is much more interesting than a week by week because things can change. You could have one book bad week of pulls, right? So I have a running 6-month average of how each brand is doing. And if you look at the graph right now, it's like DC off the top of what you can see of the graph, then like my general average, then like indie books kind of varies, which makes sense because indie varies widely, publisher, and then off the bottom is Marvel. So I'll find a way to start showing that because it's amusing, at least to me. John Pauls, we need a Crush Claremont Siege Perilous Dazzler miniseries. See, right? Yes, that's what I'm talking about. The Siege Perilous gave us so many cool moments with these characters where they disappeared and they disappeared with motivation. And there were like things that we want to know about where they disappeared to. And that's why the Rogue Savage Land series is like working really well right now. And obviously we could do that for Rogue or for Dazzler going through the Siege Perilous. What a great idea. I wonder who they could get to write that, or at least write the songs for it. Come on. Matt Fraction wrote really good songs for Dazzler in his Uncanny X-Men run. And there's this one that the lyrics that he gave it were so good that I can like hear it in my head. Cause it's like a total, even at the time it reminded me, I'm like, oh, this is like a Kylie Minogue song. So maybe I should put that to music and play that one week because it was something about the garden and a stake. Plus Madonna had a song really similar on Confessions on the Dance Floor. So I think I like kind of interpolated that. Max says Concert Chambers #1, there was dupe. There are instruments that were drawn correctly. 5 out of 5. Well, Leah Williams should be the modern blueprint for writing Dazzler. I don't know if I agree with that sentence, but Leah Williams did have fun with Dazzler and did something with Dazzler. And Dazzler had motive. It was fun to see that she's like, God, I just was trying to date this hot guy and he turned out to be a vampire. Damn it. Like that was funny to me. Cruel Angel read Cruel Kingdom because it's on brand for them. Last issue of the first run, actually liked What You Wish For. Cinderella-esque story reminded me of the grim fairy tales in the original EC comics. Oh, well, maybe it was a good issue. Maybe it was a good issue. I didn't read Daredevil Cold Day in Hell, but James did. This was great. We can get Charles Soule and Steve Niven back on a Daredevil ongoing, please. I felt the emotion and pain with Matt. Brendan Riley read it and it was absolutely fantastic. Oh, you're going to wear me down. I don't like buying Ultimate Universe comics. I don't like them, but you're going to wear me down. You're going to wear me down. Max really enjoyed Deadpool, but is that a surprise? Max is a confirmed Deadpool liker. Dan Waters did Jinx next week. Cruel Angel. It's my top pick of the week. Will it come through? Will it be the Dan Waters who I love from Dark Patterns, or will it be the Dan Waters who I like slightly less from Nightwing? We will see next week. G.I. Joe 21, Nick and everyone could follow along. If you can't follow along, it failed. Exactly. For a silent comic book, it's not for every artist. It makes me a little afraid about that Dan Waters one next week, because it's Danny as another artist with a very idiosyncratic style that I don't know is going to work well for a silent comic, but I'm going in with an open mind as I go in. Hacker Arcade, hello. How do I find the time to read the books a week? Not only do I read them every week, I read them all within a single, usually 48-hour period, which is fucking crazy. I don't know. This weekend there were 45. So I read an issue in like anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. So, but then I also make notes on the issue, and then I do screenshots of the panels and stuff. So and that takes another 3. So all in, I take 9 to 12 minutes per issue. So in a week that has 60 issues, which last week had way more than 60, we're talking about potentially 12 hours. And so I usually do 2 hours on a Friday night after everybody goes to bed. I usually read for about 4 or 5 hours broken up across the day. And Saturday I read early in the morning, then I read in the middle of the day when most people would maybe watch TV, and then I read at night. And then Sunday, I just every free minute between like grocery shopping and cooking or whatever, I read. But the thing is, I don't have other hobbies. I have a child. I cook. I exercise, but this is my hobby. So it's like, I couldn't tell you the last time I watched television. That's how I have the time to read these books. Everybody jamming on Evanescence, but Saz Murph disagreeing on G.I. Joe's silent missions with Beachhead. And guess what? While it may not be a democracy, we do invite dissenting opinions on the show, especially from Saz Murph. I was able to follow it. I thought Hester did a good job letting the sequencing of the story tell art. Well, you know what? I am but one opinion on the internet. And this is why I encourage you all to comment, because maybe I just didn't get it. Maybe Phil Hester is just never going to be for me. Spoilers, that might be true. Sorry, side tangent from I'm No Jenny. What are my thoughts on Low by Rick Remender? I'm having a Rick Remender resurgence where I'm like appreciating where he's coming from. So at the time I didn't love it, but I think I'm going to probably reread all of Rick Remender's Giant Generator, because I feel like maybe I just need to get older. Maybe I just need to get angrier at the world. But I'm vibing with Rick Remender more than ever before. Carlos Arguelles saying Evanescence forever. Yes. Excited to read Helverine. I don't want to build it up to be better than it is. It's very my shit. It's the Crisis shit perfectly. Even though it's Ben Percy, who I don't even think I mentioned his name while I was reviewing that issue, because I love Raphael Yanko's art. I loved him so much on Greg Pak's Darth Vader that I think for me it's like an art book 1, a Daken book 2, and then happens to have Ben Percy 3. More people who love Evanescence. Maybe I should do an Evanescence cover one week. According to Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Going Under by Kelly Scovron, that's that book that I was singing the Evanescence for. It's coming out July 1st, but I didn't know if this was like one issue and that was the OGN, or if the whole thing got pushed back. I use League of Comic Geeks, which is a wiki, and all wikis are susceptible to the biases and forgetfulness of their authors, so it could have just been wrong information. And like I said, I want to read more OGN, so hopefully I will get to read it then. Max said Helverine is everything about Percy that I really enjoy. It's silly, but it's enjoyably silly. Nick N, if you want a Daken omnibus, breaking news. The thing I did this weekend, other than read comics, since I only had 45 comics to read, was I got the data ready for the Marvel Omnibus Tiger Eyes Secret Ballot Poll, which is launching in about 3 weeks on Near Mint Condition. And I will be co-hosting, which is truly one of the great joys of my life, that I get to present this poll, because I used to look forward to it every year like Christmas. And the fact that I get to work on the data now and like talk to Tiger Eyes and introduce the poll with Omar, nothing in comics makes me happier than that, because I am a junkie for mapping, collecting, whatever. So look, we had 630 options last year, and over 1,500 votes. It might have even been over 2,000. I don't recall. And everybody in their vote had the option to tell us if we missed a book. And so this weekend I went through all the missed books and we added over 100 other books onto the poll. And I got a team of amazing minties from Near Mint Condition to help me proof all of the books that we've got to make sure they're titled really clearly and that they have like an obvious map that everybody would understand. And starting next week on Crushing Crisis, I will be pre-mapping every one of those 700 plus books. So point being, if you want a Daken omnibus, it's going to be right there on the omnibus poll. And if you vote for a number one, we could have it. And that first omnibus would be great. And I can tell you exactly what would be in it because I just read it all for my guide. A hypothetical Wolverine omnibus by Benjamin. Percy, do you think it would be only the Krakoa stuff or all Percy things? I don't think they could have Predator versus Wolverine because that's licensed and they don't tend to mix their licensed jelly with their Marvel only peanut butter. But I think it would, of course, have the Ghost Rider Wolverine initial crossover. The thing is, if they did a Percy omnibus, I think it would recollect that Sabretooth War arc from the end, but it wouldn't put the two Sabretooth series on with it. So then you have to ask yourself, is the first 2024 Wolverine's miniseries a good enough epilogue that they would want to put it on the end of a book that's already going to be 50 plus issues long, and some of them were double-sized issues? I do think maybe you would put Wolverine at the end of that book, maybe, because it technically happens while the end of Krakoa is happening, I think. And also it's a pretty specific epilogue on Sabretooth War. I don't know. I think they wouldn't. I think they would just stick with that Wolverine and they would wait to collect Wolverines with Wolverine if it runs for that long. But I think it would read well as an epilogue. That's my feeling. Comic Pals are here. We never know who could it be. It could be anybody from the Comic Pals. They're a collective. Or is it all four of them at the keyboard typing one letter at a time together? We don't know. We don't know. But what you missed is earlier me saying that Sean is my favorite Near Mint Condition panelist, which no one can ever prove if that's true. But in my heart, it may be. Okay. I was a fashion school serial killer. The Devil Wears Prada meets Heather's. Good idea, but need to see more before making up my mind. Okay, that's fair. That's not as unhinged as I got. Nick and Crisis is generally pretty positive. It's amusing when I go off though. Yeah, I start every comic book wanting to love the comic. Here's the thing, you can tell what I don't pull because I won't pull a comic if I don't think I'm going to love it. And even still, I will still usually pull a number one just to like give a number one a chance. But usually if I've pulled it, I have reason to believe I might like it. That's same thing for music. I never buy an album and think like I'm buying this to hate. I don't hate watch. I don't do that. Like, that's why I don't like TV. As soon as I find a series that I'm not into, I stop. But I do kind of hate read a little bit for your amusement. But I don't start with the intent to hate read, which is why you see me skip stuff by Tom King. Some that I might like, but I don't want to start with the intent to hate read. Okay. Crosby Hoffman, I don't know if I've ever said hello to you before, so hello to you. Novark, if you see my stuff, you would murder it right away. It's worse than... No, that can't be true. It can't be worse than all the books in the stream. That's impossible. But I would love to see your stuff, and you could always just send it to me one-on-one. It does not have to be on the stream. Comic Pals loved Immortal Thor this week. Me too. Lance McNair, enjoy my rants because they have substance. They aren't just rage bait. Yeah, I never want to be a YouTuber who's like baiting with rage. I don't want to be a rage baiter. That's not, I happen to have rage. It's one of my many emotional spectrum. I have all the colors of Green Lantern rings. Do I have a reading guide for Nightmare on Elm Street comics? No, I didn't even know they existed. Were they by Marvel? Can I put them in the omnibus poll? Because I will. I have that power. No, but I do love the Nightmare of Elm Street movies. And in retrospect, I love now that people have done so many queer readings of them because clearly that was not obvious to me as like a 7-year-old as I was watching them. But now it's funny when you go back to stuff from your youth that had undertones of whatever thing that you needed more of in your life. Queer readings, very progressive liberal readings about Black Power, readings about anything that you needed to support you and your identity, and be like, oh, maybe that's why I loved it so much. Okay, we do have to keep moving. So I'm just scrolling quickly. People really liked Immortal Thor. Like the concept, but the dialogue fell a little flat. Well, you know what, Brandon? Ewing had to do so much heavy lifting because each dialogue at the bottom of the page had to go with both of the prior bottom pages, and each dialogue at the top of the page had to go with each page on either side. So you almost noticed that they were all kind of amorphous, and he could only actually get anything done in the middle of the page, but then the middle of the page had to track from either direction. So this is an example where I was willing to give a little bit of a pass to the dialogue being like, here, because it was with good reason. Like there was a trick up his sleeve, and so I was willing to give him a pass. Ironheart surprised me, but I didn't realize it was a one-shot in the moment. I found myself actually looking forward to more. Yeah, I think it's hard. It's just one of those ones where I'm trying to be fair to the comic, and I think my anger in the moment had more to do with just that it was a one shot and not that the comic was bad. And sometimes I've got to separate out, like, you don't need a rant from me about something. That's not their fault that they got a one shot. They pitched it and they got it and they wrote a better book than Concert of Champions. So I don't need to rant about it. Okay. Max wants to write a jingle for Jeff. Max would write a whole musical about Jeff. Pills for a rash? Rashes need cream. As Teleconson never had a rash. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you saw my face before, it looked like the face that I wear to this because of all the AI that's being used on my face right now. Then you would know that I know all about that. Or the Geomaster is just loving on something. Scriptured, what are my rankings for the absolute number ones? Oh, I know this because I was talking about it on some Discord this week. Best absolute number one, Martian Manhunter. Am I a Martian or a man? Number two, number one, Wonder Woman, because it just was such a big idea. Or maybe Superman. No, Superman number three, although I don't know. Superman number one might have been better than Wonder Woman number one. Number four, Flash, because the art was gorgeous and it really drops you right into like a thing about Flash that you think you understand. Number five, Batman, which I hate. And number six, Green Lantern, because it was boring. Okay. Right? There's been six so far. Lance is on my fourth trade paperback of Ryan North's Fantastic Four and still loving it. Yeah, it's finally starting to get a little bit weaker now that he's dividing his attention to the event. James the Media Master, what are my favorite old X-Men team books that you think need attention? Peter Dave, honestly, 90s gets a lot of flack because it was the 90s and it gets very full of itself in the actual X-Men line. I swear we're going to talk about new books again in a second. And so I think the main books kind of start declining in quality around 1995. But honestly, I think the side books are very readable. The less an X-Men book has to be responsible for moving the whole plot of the line along, the better the book gets the chance to be. So X-Force, Excalibur, X-Factor, I love those books in the late 90s. I think they're really fun. They're really readable. Generation X. I like all those. Okay. Yeah, I want to find a platform online that is, I guess I could get Kindle books from Amazon France and they would show up on my Kindle app because I have some French BD, but I would love to read BD in French. I think that would be really good for me. And then I could talk about them in English because I'm not going to try to speak French fluently on the show. No Horn, please correct if I have this wrong. It feels like the comics YouTube community, it seems like a lot of people are avoiding addressing the tariffs directly. Well, I think people are afraid to be political, which is not me on this show, y'all. This is a liberal show. You need to understand. I'm not saying you have to agree with me, but part of why I'm back is because I think we need people who are unabashed liberals, who are not trying to equivocate, who are willing to say that. That's why I end every show saying trans rights are human rights. I don't want anybody to make any mistakes. So I do think some shows are trying to not be political because they know they have fans on both sides of the fence and they don't want to offend anybody. But also, this tariffs thing is so new. It's so late breaking. And the last two times that POTUS has brought this to the table in the past couple of months, he has reversed course very quickly because he kind of got something he wanted from the other country, but he has been advocating for tariffs for decades. So I think this is a different beast, but I think people just don't want to jump to a conclusion. I'm a politics junkie. I am convinced I could speak on it pretty intelligently. Not every comic books YouTuber is a politics junkie. So I also give them some grace for they don't want to put their foot in it by explaining it the wrong way. Still confused about the physical Jeff issues. Yes, they are reprints of the digital issues. Every 12 to 24 digital Jeff issues, there's one physical Jeff issue. Okay. No, I don't think you're triggering anybody. And I'm not afraid to talk about political topics on this channel. And this channel will probably get more political as the year goes on, I assure you, because I have a lot of people I love in the United States right now who are hurting in many, many different ways as a result. And then I could be political about it in New Zealand too. Okay, but then we did the no wrong answer thing. But oh my gosh, you all are so wonderful. And I will go back and read all of these comments, drink. But James Abel says the Nightmare on Elm Street comic was from Marvel. Might have to be on the omnibus poll. Okay. You asked Omar to add something to the poll, but you have to ask me. It's me. I'm the captain. But yes, the second Black Panther book is on the poll. It was already on the poll. It was on the poll last year. I wouldn't overlook that. I edited Black Panther's options personally. All right, we got to get back to the books. Should I just have a stream where we just talk? Do we just need that? Do I just need an OmniDog style stream where I get on once a week and maybe I just wear a luchador mask so I don't have to do all this? Well, by the way, I know you're not here because you love drag, and I'm not saying I do drag, but to me, this is drag. This is the best I've done this whole year so far. Okay. I just want to put it out there that I almost messed up at the end. And I was like, take a step back, put the brush down and go start streaming. And I'm very happy with my results. That's all. If I could just be vain, because I'm so vain. I write all of these songs all about me. Okay. Seeing some support for the talk streams. But we got to get back to me screaming about books. And if there's a book that I'm going to scream about, you know it's going to be JSA by Jeff Lemire, because I hate this book. Oh boy, do I hate it. I hate it. Okay, so apparently I've got a demon voice this week. Okay. So look, here's what I'm here. This page, this is what I'm here for. I want the old aged JSM members interacting with the young JSM members in a meaningful way. So this comic got a little bit closer to what I've been looking for all of this time. But again, 6 issues. I still don't understand why they were even having a fight. Like, it's been so lost in the sauce. And this ends with a big death that, even though it's not like a character that I love because I don't really know the JSA that well, I was like, this is some bullshit. So like, I try to have grace for every comic issue every time, but we just spent 6 issues doing nothing, learning nothing. Also, there was this sequence in this that I hated, that it was Wildcat with the young Dr. Fate, and he's like, you got to learn how to box, kid. And Dr. Fate's like, I don't want to box. And Wildcat's like, one day it's going to matter. And then they're on a battlefield, and Dr. Fate's like, I'm freaking out. And Wildcat's like, you got this, kid. I love you. You're the best. I'm like, that doesn't, Jeff Lemire, you're not even doing your dad comics right. That doesn't track. Like, we never had a moment to see Wildcat feel, if that's his name, I don't know all of my DC characters that well. We never had a moment to see him be like, I was too hard on him in the moment, and like adjust his dadding. So the fact that he like flipped a page later to like change the way he was coaching this kid, it didn't give the character a moment to breathe. But that's my problem with this whole series. But I love these characters, especially the younger generation that was Infinity Inc., like Jade and all of them. I'm just hoping now that this fight is over and we killed somebody and it's all, I'm hoping we can just focus on the characters. Jeff Lemire, that's the thing you're actually good at. Remember the Terrifics? I love the Terrifics so much. Can we go back to there? I want to go back to there. Okay. Well, I'm really happy to report that, I've been a little shaky on this Justice League, the Atom Project, and this issue number 4, this sealed the deal for me. I think that Ryan Parrott and John Ridley landed the plane. I think it was mission successful. I think we got there. First of all, I mean, Mike Perkins with Adriano Lucas that I mentioned earlier in the show. Adriano Lucas's coloring style here, totally different than on any of those other books. And he now is definitely my favorite colorist on Mike Perkins. Never let them be apart ever again. But the thing that worked about this to me is this is doing a fractured narrative, which I don't always love, but it's not fracturing it issue by issue. It's like half of the issues in the past, half is in the future, and they're intercut. And last issue, we came to like the crux of the intercutting, or what felt like the crux of the intercutting, because we found out like why everything was happening based on the past story. What I liked about this issue is it kept telling the past story. So now it feels like the past story is like moved past the climax and we're getting more and more information. It's just making it snowball as it gets faster and faster, and we're moving towards the modern day. And then meanwhile, in the present day plot, we get this awesome showdown between Captain Atom and Major Force that looks so cool. And now we're like realizing how messed up it is that Captain Atom is basically acting as like this is a terrible analogy, I'll just leave it. But he's absorbing all these powers that have been misassigned, but he also can get rid of the powers. So they can osmose in and out from him, but people realize that and they're trying to use that against him, or use him against other people, or use those powers against other people. And like, I think that last issue kind of like showed us the how of that, and then this issue dealt with the why and of that. And I think that's good comic scripting, really well paced. It got me right to where I wanted to be, right at the crux of this. I forget if this is 5 issues or 6 issues, but I feel like it's cresting at the perfect time. It's going to give me exactly what I wanted from it, and then we're going to merge back into Justice League, and that is well done. So credit to Ryan Parrott and credit to John Ridley, who I don't always really like either of them, but I go into every comic wanting to love it, and I did really. This is almost my top pick of the week this week, but Birds of Prey. What are you going to do? Okay. I did 2, because I did 1 from the present, and then I did 1 from the past. This panel of the Atom. We have to talk about this. So they're trying to like house arrest Captain Atom, but Captain Atom is effectively Dr. Manhattan. I mean, that's who Dr. Manhattan is based on. So, and plus he's all of these powers, so they can't. So he's like, I'm just going to go get some air. And the Atom, Ryan Choi is like, no, what if you didn't? And he's like, no, I'm going to get some air. And he's like, no, you didn't. And he turns and you just see him looking over his shoulder, and this great picture that the whole panel is just taken up by his back. And then the word balloon is, I'm suddenly your prisoner. Love it. Just great paneling choice there to sell that glance, and you can't even see his eye because it's entirely in shadow. All you can hear is like the tone of his voice as he sends this comment over his shoulder. Great comic book making. The final issue of Juvenile, I was so excited at the beginning of this comic book by Jesus Orellana, who does everything. Letters, script, colors, everything. I just think it just had this feeling of, to me, of a comic book that it was like somebody's first time. Like, I'm sure if I did a comic book for the first time, it would be so hard to restrain myself. I'd have so many things. I want to do magic things and superhero things and things about powers and things about queer people. I would just want to do so much, and it would be so hard to not. And that's what this felt like. Like it was Children of Men, but it was The Matrix, but it was X-Men, but it was just so many things at once. And this issue is just this crowd of kids like running up and down a hallway being like, we have powers, you're lying. We have powers, you're lying. And like, it was 20 pages. And then at the end, they pretty much do a straight up Matrix moment, and then it ends. And I think the thing to me was like, this is always a human story, but it was in a very interesting world that Jesus Orellana built. And I just felt like we never fully got the human story and we never got the world. I don't think 5 issues were enough. I think the craft is strong. I think I will absolutely buy their next comic book. I think they're a creator to watch. I love their artwork. I'm interested in them in a fundamental way. However, this turned out to be kind of a catastrophe, and I would not recommend it. If it comes up for like free on Comixology Unlimited or on Global Comics, read the number 1, because the number 1 was really, really cool. But I just don't, I think an editor could have helped this. I always smile when I see an indie book that has an editor, because they don't always, they're like, I'm a writer, that's good enough. As somebody who makes mistakes constantly and does not even know my own Crushing Krisis lore, I wish I had the budget for an editor. Just on my posts on Crushing Krisis, you guys will find mistakes all the time. There's only so much you can edit yourself. That's where things like Grammarly come in, but I'm not sponsored because they do also use generative AI. Okay, let's move on. What's next? Oh, fucking yes. Okay, so every week that Catabasis comes out, it's from Black Box Comics, I'm like, I go knock, knock, knock on the blue sky of the creator. And I'm like, hey, are you going to put these up on Global Comics? Because that's the only way they're available digitally. Well, this week, I don't know if I had an effect on that or if he just did it himself, but issues 2, 3, and 4 all went up on Global Comics. So I got to binge Catabasis. I love this book. I love this book. I love this book. Okay, here's why. It starts out with this very cool number 1 that sells you the concept of this person who is ferrying souls between heaven and hell as their secret agent. It's like a Black Widow of heaven and hell, right? Amazing art, just as good as this cover. So then I thought it was going to be a big idea book, which is kind of one of my problems with Juvenile, right? But instead it was like, no, forget the big idea. We're going to keep a tight focus on this one heist style mission to get a particular soul out of hell and to heaven. And also ferry another soul along with as part of the journey. So because it was that tight, it makes it really easy for me to love it, because it told me up front, don't get too invested in thinking about the rules of heaven and hell or why the angels or why this or why that. And so it's just a heist comic, and the art is so good. The action is so easy to track. The colors are so good. The pencils, inks, and colors all by Carlos Lopez. I love you, Carlos Lopez. You are killing it. And it just was like really entertaining to me. And just look at this like big cloaked monster, and then it puts its claws down on this girl, and then she's like, it's not me you have to worry about, it's the person behind you. Because what they have to do, I'm going over because I'm talking about 3 issues here that I caught up on. They basically are on like Sharon's ship, and they know they need one of the coins that gives passage deeper into hell, because like, you know how you have to pay a coin to the ferryman. If they get one of those coins, it'll let them go deeper into hell to where this good soul is kept. And so first they have to do a heist on the ship in order to then do a heist deeper into hell so that they could get the person out. And so I guess I didn't do an interior page from number 3. So then they go deep in hell, but then things get too real, because this Catabasis character, or no, her character is June. I forget if she's called Catabasis or the thing she's doing is Catabasis, but she basically is kind of like Spawn. Like, she has demonic powers, but she can like only use them so much. And basically they're on the run for this whole issue from this demon. And she's like, I can't use my powers for running and for fighting at the same time. I'm going to run out. And it's just like a great, cool chase sequence. I have room in my heart for action comic books that are just action. Like, that's fine for me. And the level of craft is so high. The action is so cool, and I can really follow it. And it's kind of said, you know what, maybe one day we're going to get to the big idea, but right now this is just about the heist of it. Godzilla heist tech note. And I'm all about that. So please go on Global Comics and read this comic and favorite it and like it and get it some views. Please go talk to this creator on Blue Sky and Damien Becton and tell him you think he's so cool, which I will continue doing. And I just was looking ahead in solicits, and Black Box Comics, this company, has a comic coming out from DG Chichester, like of Daredevil fame, who Omar loves. So I'm excited for more Black Box Comics. If it's going to be of this quality and the art's going to be this good and the colors are going to be this good. By the way, lettered by Desi Senti. Letters are really good as well. Yeah. So I'm not saying it's not going to change your world. It's not going to change your worldview. It's just a fun heist in hell comic book with really cool art. I thought it was going to be my pick of the week because I already knew I was obsessed with it. Oh, here's some more internal art. Look, I usually don't take splash pages, but look, this maybe was the issue. I had this in the wrong order. This was maybe the one that I thought I didn't take an interior from. So this is like Cerebus or Cerebra, whatever, isn't it? The three-headed dog just bearing down on her as she's like getting this giant hell mace that she's going to swing at him. Love it. Love it. I thought that was going to be my book of the week, but then I encountered No, Not a Man as my indie pick of the week. So this is by C.S. Garcia Martinez, and it is, I just happened to notice it because whoever, maybe they themselves, thought to put it on League of Comic Book Geeks, which I used for discovery. But actually, if you just Google No, Not a Man and that last name Martinez, you will find it's on itch.io, which maybe James will find the link, no pressure. And you'll be able to find it. So you just pay $5, and it was like 60 or 70 pages. And so I have to say, you have to remember that I'm not like you. I love truly indie comic books. So I am okay going like full indie and having it be a little scratchy and weird and misshapen. If it's like good storytelling and good character work, I'm not holding every comic to the level of judgment that I'm holding a new X-Men comic to. If this was the art in X-Men, that's a double standard. I get it. I'm allowed. It's my show, not yours. So if this is the art in X-Men, I would complain. But in an indie comic book, self-published by somebody who is publishing it on their own, itch.io, distributed on their own, this was great. And the story was so interesting. It's about this woman who's a PhD scientist, and she's experimenting with if sperm cells can be created from any stem cell, right? But she discovers that the person sponsoring her research was fraudulent, and she winds up losing her job, which is the thing. Tons of people in grant research at the PhD and graduate level are losing their jobs right now because the funding has been cut all across America to universities. Some universities are not seating any graduate assistants for the incoming year. So this is like a real thing that's happening. I guess I should start the timer, but I'm going to talk however long I want to talk. And so she is like, fine. She's like, I'm going to be unemployable. I didn't even finish my PhD. So she winds up taking a job at a startup, which I have had multiple times in my life. And it's really cool and fun. And, but in the startup, she's like, in a way, they're less ethically challenged than the PhD person, but in a way, they're more ethically challenged because they don't really care what they're using the science for. They just care if they get a patent or whatever. And so she's still working on this mouse, in vitro versus in vivo stuff there, which I've actually worked on professionally a little bit. So I think that's another reason I like this comic. But then she's at home with her partner, and they're, I think they're married, but they're long-term partners. And she's like, if I cracked this thing, if I could make any stem cell turn into a sperm cell, either of us could be a father to our children. And I know people who are in woman relationships that have been through this in my life. So I think it did hit home for me, but it also was just really interesting. So then she is like, what if I just keep working on it? What if it doesn't matter if I can patent it or not? What if it works just one time? And so this is just her process of trying to decide, is it ethical to even create this thing? Is it ethical to do it on her own? Is the ethics of creating a path to birth that knows not a man self-evident? Does it excuse itself? Is it ethical because it's an ethical pursuit on its own and you don't have to question what you do on the way to get there? Really interesting stuff. Loved it. I think it's a one-off. It doesn't have a big conclusion. It kind of ends in an open-ended way, but it just really made me think. And I read it early in the weekend, and I just kept thinking about it all weekend long. I would absolutely buy more from this creator, whose name is C.S. Garcia Martinez. I really just think it's super, super cool. Let me see if I can find the URL really quick. No, Not a Man, and put it into the chat. Okay. The full title is No, Not a Man, a novel method for the in vitro differentiation of spermatozoa from human-induced pluripotent stem cells. Love. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to show. And so, but I think if you just search for No Not A Man itch.io, you'll find it. But that is the full URL if you want to bring up the chat at this point, and it is $5. And that goes no in between. Nobody takes any money out of that. Itch.io might take like 50 cents. I don't know. That all goes to the creator. So go and support a really cool indie creator. I was going to read this one, let this one be a devil, because I love this artist, Piotr Kowalski. But I remembered I couldn't even figure out if the first one was like an anthology book or like a one shot or like what it was trying to say. It's about like the Jersey Devil, but like in the 1700s or something. And I was like, you know what? I've only got so much time in my day. I am not going to read this comic book this week. I'm not. You know what I'm going to read? I'm going to read a devil comic that I thought I already knew that I liked. Well, it turns out I was mistaken, because, oh my gosh, did I get into a Hulk rage about Lucky Devils by Charles Soule, Ryan Brown, and who did the letters? Christopher Crank. You're let off. I'm mostly mad at the other two. I find this story, I like Devil and Hell stuff, as we've strongly established for weeks now. But this story of the origin of why these devils are like assholes, but then like an asshole devil is like kind of a good devil because they want to mess with the devil system of devils being assholes. I don't care. It's not interesting at all. And then the whole thing that they're like humans that they're working with are like, they're like manipulating them to be bad and do good. It still doesn't make sense. We still haven't seen the humans do anything interesting. Like one of them goes to like a dinner where people get food poisoned, but he doesn't get food poisoned. So now he has more influence on more people. Like it's just fundamentally uninteresting. I think this is one of those things where I see this concept and I see so much potential for a concept of demons who are like working together with their humans to not always do bad stuff, but gain them more influence. Because eventually that demon is going to be very influential in hell, but it's going to turn out that they made this really good person on Earth, and it's all going to come to light. And that's interesting to me. But when I tell you I hated every single page and every single word balloon and every single motivation and everything. Also, if I'm being honest, love how Ryan Brown draws the demons, hate how he draws the people. Hate it. So this is a drop for me. I don't have time. I can't hang in on a book that makes me angry and that I just think is so pointless. But it's not bad. This is not every page of this was bad comment from me. This is expectations of the Thieves of Joy. What I want from this concept, it is not giving me. Okay. Now we come to, Marvel Rivals. You already heard me talk about this because I read this as it was a digital comic for 6 weeks and I commented on it every week and I thought it was pretty cute. It was cute. It's not going to tell you a whole lot about the lore of the game. It's not going to tell you a whole lot about these characters. It's just a comic by Paul Allor about the toyetic nature of these characters being in a video game. If you want to read that, get it physical, or it's on Marvel Unlimited. Just read it if you've already got Marvel Unlimited. Now we come to Miles Morales' Spider-Man in the first arc of God War, which made me ask, Cody Ziegler, can we get you to write a Thor comic for us, or like a Gotti comics? So this is Cody Ziegler writing, Marco Renna artist, Brian Valenza on colors, and Corey Petit on letters. And here's the thing that I loved the most about this comic book is it was dense. There were so many scene setups. I checked no less than 3 times to make sure that this was not a double-length comic book because it felt so dense with stuff that I was sure it had to be extra length. No, it wasn't. So we get this whole setup of this villain from a pantheon, a Greek pantheon, who is like, I'm going to make Spider-Man pay. And Ares like, good, because I want you to kill Spider-Man, because Ares has a dispute with Anansi, who just glommed on to Miles Morales when Miles Morales was in Wakanda in that arc that had a great script but really bad art. But then Miles is just living his high school life, written very well and age appropriately. But then Anansi's in his classroom and he's like, I don't have time for this right now. But then the bad guy, the Pantheon bad guy attacks him and he's like, oh my gosh, I can't have my classmates know that I'm Spider-Man. But then Thor shows up and Hercules shows up and there's a fight. It just kept going and going. And then I got to the end and it was like only 24 pages. I'm like, how is that only 24 pages? So look, I think Cody Ziegler's voice for this is great. I think the action was good. I like this was Renna's art was a little bit more cartoony, which I will take. Like Miles is a young character. I think that can bear the weight of an art that's like not as angular and a little bit more cartoony, but it wasn't as like zany as that Danielle de Nicoleau's art from that arc that I didn't like. I'm in for this God War arc. Like part of me is like, oh, Miles Morales, really? Do we need him being a tool of the gods? Like, can he just be Spider-Man? But here's the thing. If you go back and read any old comic, X-Men, Spider-Man, Captain America, sometimes there are flights of fancy. Sometimes there is Capwolf. Like, I think part of loving a grounded superhero character is occasionally seeing them do hyper fantastic stuff. And I enjoy that Cody Ziegler is doing that here. Missing on the Moon. This was the final issue of this miniseries, which had a #1 that I really, really loved. It's by Corey Crater, charmingly named since the book is Missing on the Moon, Damon Cochero, Patricio Del Pesce, and the omnipresent Hassan Otsman El Hal on letters. This, You know, I love the world building of this so much. And this was a series that did break my expectation. I thought it was going to be about one sci-fi thing. It almost felt like every issue was about its own thing. Like one issue was about like the whole idea of why is the moon populated and the war between the USSR and the US and how that all happened. Love that. Then one issue was like very much about like police corruption, which was interesting, but I was like, but that's not what I came here for. But you know what? I liked it because every issue managed to do its own theme while still telling a complete story, which I think is a pretty big feat for a 4-issue miniseries. And I get it. Like they knew they were going to have 100 issues. Would I have read 100 issues of them telling the whole extended history of how the moon went from USSR control to US control? Yes, I loved the data page at the end of the first issue, but they only had 4 issues, so they had to get somewhere. And I really think this got somewhere. It got to like how all of these things connect. How are we going to break them apart? How is this down in his luck detective connected to this conspiracy of the former USSR people, connected to the kids who were being kidnapped, connected to his own grief? And it got there. It got there. I do think that the action at the end was a little bit rushed. It was a little bit unmotivated. I don't know if I totally believed all of the action being set up the way that it was, but the book ultimately did fulfill its promise, and it had an excellent number 1. And I will take the slope of like excellent number 1 down to decent finish. That to me is still a comic book worth reading. I know how hard this is to do, and I really admire how much audacious scope Corey Crater had, both for his world, but also the amount of story that he wanted to get through in 4 issues. Like I give a lot of credit for that. I don't read Juniba's Monkey Meat. It's just not my thing. I don't read Monster High Bullseye, although I love this Cyclops girl with green skin with the peace signs. Super cute. Love the braids. It looks like they're braids of braids. Big fan. I did read. Okay. So this okay is not about me hating this. I finally get to talk about Moon Girl. I was so excited for Moon Girl when it first came out at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. So I was like, whoa, here's like an actual Marvel comic about like a 9-year-old kid. I mean, you know, I always say, I think Marvel comics should have kids in them. I don't think everybody should be a teenager, even if it's rated all ages or whatever. And this is rated teen, which I don't get. I think Moon Girl should always be rated all ages. But I think Marvel won't let a main Marvel Universe book be rated more all ages, because then if some kid sees the Hulk and they read the Hulk and they're like, mommy, the Hulk was scary, I guess. I don't know. But what I discovered in reading Moon Girl was I hated the character so much. And I really did a lot of interrogating for that, because I'm like, okay, here's a young Black girl who's sassy and knows things. Are you just on some level responding with like an inherent bias that like you would be okay if this character was a young white boy and he knew things? And what I came out with was no, because I don't think a 9-year-old character should get to be that big of an asshole all the time. And I think the creators on the book, and 2 of the original creators are here on this book, Brandon Montclair and Nacha Bustos, I don't think they ever contended with the idea of how big of an asshole they had made Moon Girl. And so she just kept being an asshole all the time to all these other heroes and friends her own age. And like, it was funny. And I understand that she was doing it because she was so smart and they were trying to say something with it. But ultimately, it made it hard to appreciate her. And ultimately, I would never give it to my 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old, because it sent the message I felt in every issue that if you're smart, you can treat people badly, which I know she doesn't believe that because she's a kid. She's imperfect. She's 9, but I don't think the comic enough commented on that. Since then, Moon Girl's been used in other books. She was in Secret Warriors. She's in that wonderful Avengers Academy book that I love so much. And she's being used very well there in a way. I'm not asking for her to be put in her place or like humbled. She's just an asshole sometimes there. And then other people are like, you can't act like that all the time. And she's like, okay, you're right. And that's all I was ever looking for. So here we get the original team back to do some Moon Girl. And it's fine. She has a birthday party where she lies to everybody and she's kind of sassy to them. And at the end, she's like, sorry, I was being sassy. So maybe they understand, but it was an Impossible Man story. And I think Impossible Man stories are boring. And also the art was fine, but it's in continuity, but it's going to fit in a weird place in continuity. Cause like Moon Knight is participating in things with these other heroes. Doctor Strange hasn't left for Asgard yet. And Thing is still a rocky thing. So like continuity wise, good luck figuring out that for your reading guide, I guess is a message to my future self. And then also it's just, but Nacha Bustos art really, really adorable. And then I had a backup story about like some future like daughters of Moon Girl or something, which I could not give a single shit about. But I will say it was written by Justine Ireland, whatevs. But this art from Luca Claretti, colored by one of my faves, Andrew Dahlhaus, really, really loved. Dahlhaus just has a way of making every color glow, like even the dark colors glow. And I really, really like the way that Luca Claretti choreographed the action. So I'll really be on the lookout for more comics from Luca Claretti. All in all, I don't think, even if you're a Moon Girl lover, I don't think that there's a reason you need to read that. However, let's talk about the reasons to read Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu, number 7, from Jed MacKay, Domenico Carbone, Rachel Rosenberg, and Corey Petit. This did a really interesting thing, which was that it centered 8-Ball, and it was a heist comic, and apparently I like those this week. And it did this really fun plot of like, they need to figure out how to counteract this street drug, but the only person Moon Knight can think of that would know would be Hank Pym. But Hank Pym has gone kind of crazy lately and merged and unmerged with Ultron. So how do we get to Hank Pym? We're going to go through Nadia Van Dyne, who's also Nadia Pym, who's Hank Pym's daughter that had been in the Red Room. So they're like, we're going to put her at risk and stage a heist, to which like the other characters are like, are you stupid? Like, she's a Red Room trained assassin and a scientist. And all that stuff in a layer cake is really, really fun. It makes for a really good one-shot issue that contributes to the overarching arc. 2 complaints. 1, Hank Pym stuff is so complicated, especially if you have not been reading Jerry Duggan's Uncanny Avengers over the past 10 years at this point, that I really, and this book is not a book all about Hank Pym, and it only talked a little bit about how Hank Pym was on the West Coast Avengers with Tiger and Moon Knight. I feel like it had to do a lot of heavy lifting to educate the reader about the whole Hank Pym story to like get us all the way there, which is fine. It wasn't done badly. I was just like, that was a heavy lift. And some of the panel layouts from this artist, who's one of the 2 alternating artists, Domenico Carbone, wasn't super motivated. Like, this page is doing too much. What are we doing here? Why are all these weird ass trapezoids stacked on top of each other? Why does the blue and the background of the tight look at her head continue beneath that panel when this panel cuts that panel off, and that panel itself had an inner border? I guess it's the screen, and we're seeing the screen in the background. It's just too much. You're doing too much. This page would have read just as well with just these 3 panels being straight up and down normal. Like, it's not guiding my eye anywhere, especially because this panel has this like weird shape that cuts it, and it leads my eye. Like, it's just not good paneling. It's not. Doesn't mean the comic was bad. Doesn't mean the art was bad. I just definitely had a few times, especially because the other artist on this book, Pramalik, does such amazing paneling. There are a couple points that I'm like, I feel like you're trying to like get jiggy with your paneling, and you're just not, you don't have like a good gut sense of what to do with it the way Pramalik does. Still a great comic book. Now we come to first Pantheon. This looked cool, and I actually looked hard to find a digital of this. This is another one of these books that I think started as a Kickstarter, and then they're fulfilling their physical Kickstarters via Diamond. But like, if you wanted the digital, you had to pledge I don't know. It looked cool. It said he was an Afro-Italiano hero, and I'm like, I'm down for that. I want to totally read that. So I'm going to try to find it because it just looked cool. And I think I discovered the interior art is by the same artist as the cover. And I just like this guy. He's in space, and he like got a Happy Meal, and his fries are floating away, and his like hamburgers come apart. There's just something really charming about that to me. Pastime. Okay. This one, I think this is just a not for me. I don't think it was bad. Joe Harris wrote it. Art from Russell Olson. Letters from Carlos Mangual, and I guess Russell Olson did his own colors. So this is a really interesting setting. It's talking about the first time that baseball gets played at night in Chicago with all the lights. And then it's also at the same time flashing back to the first time that in these kind of like cornfield leagues of baseball, like the League of Their Own, they were played with lights so they could play at night. And that there's a serial killer that was at the fringe of this baseball playing, and that this one very famous coach / I don't know what he quite is, kind of took a shine to the serial killer. And so he kind of coached the serial killer the way he would coach somebody in baseball. There's something very interesting about that. And I understand baseball, like I can follow it, but it's not my fave. And the baseball stuff for me just was like, it just took up a lot of the book. And I got the sense that it was going to keep taking up a lot of the book. And I do like sports comics sometimes to a degree, but I just don't want to read about baseball. So I was like really into the serial killer stuff and the way he's like lurking at the edges of the field. And he doesn't seem to like care about baseball, but then he like kind of gets a liking for it. So then he like, maybe he's going to get involved in baseball somehow. And like, there's something really interesting about all that. I just don't care enough about baseball to keep reading it. But if that sounds interesting to you, it was very well done. It's just not for me. For me, however, and I came very, very close. In fact, did I make this my NT pick of the week? I can't remember now if I made No Man or Plague House my pick of the week, because this was great. This is written by Michael Conrad, who I've liked on a lot of DC stuff, and illustrated and lettered by Dave Chisholm. This was really friggin' cool. I was really into it. So it's about these paranormal investigators, and they're like, most of this is BS. Most of the paranormal stuff is not real. There's nothing paranormal happening. We just go to the house and we make our video. And it has this one awesome non-binary character. And I like, personally, this is a personal thing, I like when there's a non-binary character and the book doesn't make a point to tell you what gender they were assigned at birth. Like, it's not like, well, they used to be a him, but now they're a they. Just let them be a they. Like, this is fiction. Let's take advantage. Like, when we see an actor on screen, on television, or whatever, like, some part of our mind, no matter how liberated we are from the idea of gender, which is a construct, tear it apart, some part of our mind is thinking about that person being assigned at birth. Even for me, somebody who is non-binary, I still think about that. I just loved that this had a non-binary character, that we're just not going to make a comment or think about that at all. And that made my little non-binary heart glow. But anyway, let's talk about the actual comic book. So it's this squad of 3 paranormal investigators. One is this total skeptic, non-binary, they, them, who's like, none of this is probably ever real. And they have this whole career of debunking stuff online. And so this one paranormal person hooks up with them because they're like, okay, but every so often it's real and I need a skeptic on my team. And then also he hooks up with this priest for his team. And the priest is there to be like, what if the things are like heavy religious? So they go into this one house where clearly some bad mojo has gone down. And they're trying to figure out, is it a hoax, or like, that's just because there's bloodstains in the house, or are there really ghosts? And it just builds and builds and builds and gets creepier and builds and creepier and builds, and then it's like, wah! And then cut to a fast forward to a year from now, and I won't say what happens, but it was like, not only did it made me make crazy rooster noises for the way that it built, but then it hard cut to a year from now, and it's like, there's even more, and I can't even tell you about that yet. You have to learn all the things that have happened between now and the year from now, and that's my story. Sold. That's exactly what I want. That's exactly what I'm looking for from number 1. Nailed it, did it, killed it. Exactly the thing that I was looking for. Poison ivy, poison ivy. Late at night when you're creeping, poison ivy's gonna sleeping all around. Which is probably a doo-wop song about chlamydia, if you think about it. But Poison, that took 13 seconds. This issue of Poison Ivy was not drawn by Marcio Takara, one of our normal artists. It was drawn by Brian Level, still colored by Eric Prianto. It's a shame because I think Level is good at this specific thing, which is this like gross, gutsy, vines, creepy stuff. And I think that part of it was good, but it's just, and so the guy with the orchid head looked great, but Ivy just got so gawky here that I just think I had a hard time being excited about her. Like it kind of reminded me of Kyle Holtz, who drew some Justice League Dark, but I like Kyle Holtz, but he like really sells how weird and gawky his characters are. It just felt like this was a really hard turn from how lovely the art usually is. But I do like that we're doing stuff in Marshview. I do like that this resolved some Marshview stuff, but I just don't feel like G. Willow Wilson had the plan for this book that she did for the first 24 issues. Like the first 24 issues were so well planned out, and now it just kind of feels like we're meandering a little bit. I really like this Marshview Plex. I like the way it's contrasting man and nature, and man trying to control nature, and it gives us a physical space to be in and occupy as we deal with this war between the green and the gray, and that Ivy's kind of been now recruited into being part of the gray as well, and that's all interesting, and I like how that's being expressed here. Also, great letters. This is some of my favorite letters from Hassan Otsman in all of comics. But this issue just wasn't there for me. There was something missing here, and I don't just think it's the fault of the art. It just didn't get me all the way to my full fantasy. So now we get to talk about Polis finally. I'm mostly going to talk about the premise. So the premise of this is about a protopia. So what does that mean? A protopia is not a utopia. A protopia is a version of the world that's just a little bit better. It's a world that has figured out one aspect of hope that will make it better than the world we're stuck in, even though lots of things are still wrong. So it could still have dystopian elements, but there's one particular utopian element about it, and that makes it a protopia, which I think is so interesting. And it's actually the exact kind of comic I like. I would argue to you that all of Absolute DC is protopian because it says it's about the lack of hope and the world being hopeless and all this stuff. But actually, each one of the comics Omnis has a very specific way that its hero has still found hope in this supposedly hopeless world. So the hope that this world finds is that there's floating cities, and these cities actually, I didn't show that at all here, so we're going to stay with the cover, that the cities actually were on the water, and that they were originally refugee cities because America and other countries would not take in refugees. And so some technologist was like, well, what if we made a self-sustaining floating city off the coast of America, and we just took on refugees there? Very similar to the plot of Exit City, another book that I recently loved that I would also describe as protopian. But this now fast forward 60 years from now, and climate change has absolutely brutalized the United States, and the central government of the United States is basically like, we can't help you anymore. You know how everybody's like, we can't insure stuff in a flood zone anymore, and that's just right now in 2025. Take that to the natural conclusion. There's houses in Wellington that are beautiful houses that you cannot get insurance on because it's in potentially a flood zone, because it's in an earthquake zone, because of all, because of all the things that would make that house uninsurable. Take that to its conclusion 60 years from now. Florida, which is where this is set, there's not only going to be uninsurable houses, it might be underwater. Like, it's just might be a totally lawless land. That is not crazy dystopia. That is the reality of climate change and the sea level of cities like Miami. So I think Mark Russell, who wrote this, I love this because it was Mark Russell, no jokes, no funny business. Mark Russell in totally serious ecologically minded writer zone. And I think Lacey, the artist, did a really good job of illustrating this, and it gives us a little bit of life on this floating city. But what it really focuses on is, what is life like in Florida right now, and how would people in Florida who've remained in Florida in a very kind of like Walking Dead kind of situation, but instead of an army of mutants, it's an army of people who just like want to just like live the purge all the time. How would those people feel about these floating cities? That's so interesting. So then, to get to the end of the comic book and find out the back matter has a bunch of three creators who say that their medium is generative AI, and then based on the bios they gave of those creators, for it to really seem like there is actual generative AI work in this book, which is terrible for our climate. Not always. There are, you got to learn about everything. It's not that all generative AI is terrible for the climate, but learn. And we can talk about it in a future moment of crisis. And then to give the suggestion that was the concept art that fueled everything about this book, that made me upset. Now, what we've learned since then on Blue Sky is that Mark Russell didn't look at any of that concept art, did not base his story on any of that concept art. I don't know if that's true for the artist Lacey, because the art was showing how the city could theoretically function and float and function on its own. So I'm left really conflicted. Like, this book, up until those last few pages, gave me good feelings and made me think about the future and made me think critically. I think it's one of my favorite things I've read by Mark Russell, but I cannot support that this, and by the way, this Protopias collection is going to be 6 one-shot stories about protopias. So what I'm really hoping is that the editor of these and the person who's like being the, chiefing this collection, here's this message that we don't want generative AI in our protopian stories, and they break ties with some of these concept artists, because I think stories like this have the ability to do great good, but not when you're so tied up with something that is not just controversial, but is theft of people's art that they worked on. It's not art. You don't create art with generative AI. You generate content. Okay. So then Pop Kill, Jimmy Palmiotti turned me off a little bit too hard on his Gunslinger Spawn, Tales of Gunslinger Spawn. So even though this pop art, soda cans as grenades, you have no idea how up my alley that is. Maybe I'll read it collected. I can't with Jimmy Palmiotti right now. However, I did read Psylocke. And Psylocke, I am rooting for this comic so hard all of the time. Why? Because I like X-Women in their own comics. I want Alyssa Wong to have a win. Like, I'm never rooting against them. I just tend to wind up rooting against them because their comics haven't been really good. But this issue maybe got me there. The thing is, with psychic characters, I really think anytime you're doing a story that's like about the nature of reality, and if what they're seeing is real, it's just one of those tropes that you go to. It's just like having a rogue comic about like the voices in her head, or a Carol Danvers comic about like she doesn't know our identity. I just feel like this is such a go-to for a psychic character that part of me is like, I don't know. But I think Alyssa Wong used it really well for Psylocke. And the thing that worked for me is this really felt like it was happening inside of Jed McKay's X-Men. Like, they're in that base, they're talking with the characters, magic is there, Cyclops is there, and so it really feels like what is happening for Psylocke on the fringes of the panels of that book. And for me, that's something really appealing. I am a whore for shared universes. So I also think the art was pretty good, and I think This did more than just say maybe she's having a psychic problem. It very specifically said she was affected by hallucinogens last issue. So is she hallucinating, or have the hallucinogens made it so that she is psychically attuned to the fact that she is being haunted and maybe had been haunted all along? That is smart. And we pay a visit at the end to Rogue's X-Men in Louisiana, and here Alyssa Wong writes Death Dream, one of Gail Simone's little kitty X-Men characters, better than Gail Simone has used him so far. And I got Rogue written by somebody other than Gail Simone. So you know what? Net positives all around. Alyssa Wong, we are rooting for you. Keep it up. Okay. Resurrection Man. Well, you have to remember that I disagree with a lot of people's opinions all the time. And you also have to remember that I'm one of the few certified total fans of the existing Resurrection Man comic books in the world. And I tell you this because I hated this comic book. Quiet. I know it's by Ramvi. I know it had art from NNDK. I know that Jackson Butch Geist did the first page and it was really, really cool. I know that Mike Spicer colored it and Attica Bidkar, who I love, lettered it. I just hated it, is the problem. Resurrection Man is already his own concept. He dies, and every time he dies, he gets good powers. And I will give Ramvi some credit that making him die of old age, meaning that he, which is why it's a Black Label book, so it can't be in continuity, means that he basically held on to one power, right? It's kind of like Mora and the resurrection in Krakoa. Like, what if you just stuck with one life for a really long time? So that's interesting. And it's also interesting that after sticking with that life for such a long time, that his power would get really interesting, because his power always relates somehow to the death that he had before he gets reborn with a new power. So he's been died and come back with telekinesis, mind reading, empathy, fire powers, but flying. But here he died of old age. So what is he going to come back with? All of that is interesting. However, from there, I just don't think that this story did anything I was interested in. Like, it basically is like, you now have access to this afterlife kind of zone, and you're going to remember your history, and you were in India during World War II. None of that was, I didn't want it. I'm not saying it was a bad, I guess I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying this might be a did not want instead of a did not like. I just think Resurrection Man is so good already that doing this, like, and has so many possibilities to do a Black Label take, to do a big brain take, to do something weird and transgressive that already exists in the character. This to me is putting a hat on a hat, on a hat on a hat, on a hat and a hat. That you could have taken 3 hats off of this and it would have been better. But that's just me. That's just me. I will continue to read it because I'm going to read old Resurrection Man interspersed with it every week. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe I just love old Resurrection Man so much, and I've not seen a single person dislike this. So it could just be me. But and maybe it's just too much built up distrust of Ram V from the Detective Comics run, which I ultimately did not like, which promised me big things in the beginning and never paid off. But for me, these are too many hats, and I think you could just read an existing Resurrection Man comic and it's cooler than this. But that's me. Don't read Ripperland by Steve Orlando. I did so somehow, in a strange turn of events. Sam and Twitch was my Image comic pick of the week. Was that just because Image's picks were a little weak this week? Maybe. But here's the thing. It's a different writer. We have Jordan Burrell co-plotting and co-scripting with Todd McFarlane. And I'm not saying this is not a critique of Todd Father, because this is my favorite book that he's been writing, but it just felt snappier. It felt like we went somewhere. It felt like things happened. It felt like the dialogue was tighter. I loved this artist, Thomas Nalchik, and the colors from FCO Placina and the flats from Sheila Saldana. And I think for whatever reason, Tom Orzechowski was not having as much trouble with this dialogue right on art look in this as he's had in the past. I did actually dislike some of the drop shadow that he used, which I think made it look more stereoscopic than made it look stood off from the page. But this got really interesting because finally Sam and Twitch are together after 12 issues. And Sam has really dug into this idea of how could Twitch have killed a guy that was already dead, and Sam is like doggedly on the case. And so he's like, I need to find another junkie who seems like he's gonna die the way this junkie died. I am willing to make a bet that when he dies he won't really die, and then we'll figure out how my partner Twitch got framed. I love that. It builds off what happened last issue. And I would say I just really loved it. This art was so good. The dialogue was so much tighter. And finally, I feel like I'm like in the mystery and I'm like reading an actual Sam and Twitch case file. So after really feeling like I was almost done with this, which I'm starting to feel like on some of the Spawn books right now, I'm back in it now. So I'm hoping it's going to maintain at this quality, because I liked everything about it except for some little quibbles with some of the lettering. Speaking of which, now we come to The Scorched. by John Layman, although Todd Father always has an additional script credit. I think Todd Father writes all of the caption boxes. That's what I think. I don't have anything to prove this. Across all of the Spawn books, I think he goes in and adds caption boxes, which is his right. And also, I get that he's from a era of comics, which I'm also from, where he doesn't mind the captions explaining the art a little bit. And so that's why that's his style. And actually, there's something very charming about that. So Todd and Thomas Healy, if you want to talk to me about me being an editor and also having additional editing credits, please get in touch. But the thing that this did well was the art from Steven Scovey is great. How is he drawing 2 titles at once? I don't know. But it also dug really deeply into like what is going on with medieval Spawn, because you have to think that not all of these Spawns work the same way. They're not just always a person with a symbiote suit on them like a Venom. Sometimes the Spawn symbiote really takes over their whole jam and they're kind of put in the back seat. And with medieval Spawn, that's the case. And so he's like, he has used to them as somebody not a Spawn, because this is the team title, but they also need the firepower of medieval Spawn. So this whole issue is kind of about the push and pull of like, would we rather have him be him or would we rather him be medieval Spawn? Because here's the thing, both of them have to choose to tag back the other one. So is medieval Spawn ever going to let the other human guys drive? Unknown. And one of the reasons medieval Spawn might not want to let the human guy drive is because he thinks the human guy won't let medieval Spawn back into the driving seat later. That's fundamentally interesting. John Layman really understands how to do team books, and he structures this in an interesting way. I think if we keep doing this, it's going to feel like it's going around in a circle, which a lot of Spawn books feel like they are doing right now. But taking this issue on its own, I like the direction that we're moving in. Secret Six was my pick of the week for DC. Unfortunately, this one I think really fell pretty flat. It's written by Nicole Maines, who's the actress of Dreamer on television. Art by Steven Segovia. Oh, back to back. Look at that. Colors from Rain Barreto, who I do enjoy, and letters by Steve Wands. So it had this really interesting setup in the first issue, which was Dreamer, John Kent, and Jay Nakamura go to confront Amanda Waller in prison. They run into this baddie, and then they get teleported out. And now we have an instant Secret Six where they all hate each other. But this book, it did this thing that I don't always love in a book, which is just all fights and yelling. It's all fights and yelling. And I guess it's issue 2, and like you want to like show some action. But I don't think that people read Secret Six to watch them all punching each other. And they did get through a lot of plot in the yelling, and it was a lot about their feelings and like why they don't trust each other or whatever. But I kind of got to the end of this issue, and I'm like, I don't feel like the story went anywhere else. I feel like all these characters got done yelling at each other, and we discovered they can't be killed, or at least some of them can't. And that was it. And I kind of just like, the reason I love the first issue so much is it was so much about the emotional life of Dreamer and Jay and John Kent. And I think something weird about when Nicole Maines writes Dreamer, because she was Dreamer on TV, is I don't feel like she explains Dreamer enough. Like, it's been so long since we've paused to like talk about like what Dreamer feels and what Dreamer wants and what Dreamer's powers even are, that I feel like she kind of takes for granted. Like, well, I'm the writer and I'm Dreamer, so the Dreamer's the right voice because I'm the right voice for Dreamer. But like, as the reader, I want to be let in on Dreamer a little bit more, which I think Nicole Maines did a really good job of letting us in to John Kent and Jay Nakamura. Even still in this issue, Jay Nakamura, I think she's found more texture in Jay than anybody has so far, but I just came away from this super disappointed because it just didn't feel like there was very much content there. Spider-Boy, number 18. We only have 2 issues left because Dan Slott is absconding to DC. Farewell, Dan Slott. Now you can't ruin my favorite female characters at Marvel anymore. Only my favorite female characters at DC. But that's not what this is about. This is about Spider-Boy. This is the beginning of a little mini arc, little petit arc, by Dan Slott, Paco Medina, and colors from Eric Arsenato and letters from Joe Caramaga. This was fine. It was charming. It was good. The thing that I liked about it was it goes back to Bailey's origin. Now that we know everything that's happened to him and we know that he's not forgotten anymore because of Spider-Verse or whatever, now it's like, okay, let's deal with some more aspects of how he came to be. And we realized that it was like terribly scary and unfair for this little kid to get turned into a hero. Like, it definitely plays a little bit of the body horror beat of how he became the Spider-Boy. But it also links to in the present day that he's just, I don't know how to describe it. He's got the morality of a kid. The right and wrong seems really plain to him. So if he's got to rob a bank because the bank is doing business with a bad guy and the bad guy's secret stuff is the bank, he's like, we're going to rob the bank. The bank is working with the bad guy. Then you have Spider-Man coming into the panel to be like, well, no, you can't rob a bank. That's wrong. And Spider-Boy being like, me and Christina, we're bank robbers. And Spidey goes, no. And then Christina says, but it's okay because of the bad guy's bank. And Spider-Man rightfully says, yeah, welcome to planet Earth. What bank isn't? But that doesn't mean you can rob them. And Spider-Boy says, it's like Robin Hood. We're robbing from the rich to give to the... We're superheroes. We don't, but this bad guy's loaded. His money could save the Feast Center and set my folks up for life. I have these keys and Mr. Negative's secret lockbox, and Mr. Negative, you want to steal from Mr. Negative? Like, that is what I am here for. That is what I am here for. I'm here for a kid existing in the Marvel Universe having a different perspective on the morality of superheroes and supervillains, and that creates interesting tension with his mentor. I am here for that. I hope they find somebody that does it as well as Dan Slott whenever Dan Slott leaves, because this comic book has turned into a really charming comic book that I look forward to every month. I did not read Star Trek Lore War, although I do love lore. I love lore as a concept, and I love lore from Star Trek. They're going to get me eventually with one of these Star Trek books. One week, I'm not going to be marked safe. I did read Star Wars Hyperspace Stories, The Bad Batch, Ghost Agents. Sorry about putting a hat on a hat on a hat. By Marco Morkai, and Reese Hannigan pencils, inks from Elizabeth D'Amico, colors by Michael Atiyah, and letters by Tyler Smith and Jimmy Betancourt. Here's the thing. The Bad Batch, we get that they're all clones of the same original clone, which is Boba Fett's dad, and we get that they've been differentiated, and we get that they do these like cool missions. First of all, this page is really cool. I think Reese Hannigan did a really good job of individual characters. I really like when artists do characters that are really like heavily outlined like that. Like he's got that heavy gray outline to make him pop off of the background. But what is happening on this page? They just blew something up in the page before. So they're climbing down from this structure, but then there's a hole, but then there's another hole, but then there's stuff. But then where is this guy in relation to the hole? I had those problems a lot in this comic. And I'm a stickler. We have learned this about me. I need the action to be so explicit in a comic book. And it's not that I don't like to think about it. I just need it to be connected. And I lost that. But the other thing was, it felt like the Bad Batch was a lot talking about what they were going to do. And then the thing just happened. They were like, we've got to chase this person. And then they're like, well, now that we chased them, I'm like, wait, where we've got to break in. Now that we broke in, I'm like, where was the break in? Like, I thought I was missing pages. And then it gets to the end and this person escapes and they're just chasing them again, which is how we started this issue, which I get that it's a chase comic. I understand that. But I just think like, give us some moments to like watch the Bad Batch be good at their jobs, I guess is what I'm asking for. I don't know. I don't read Stranger Things and Dungeons and Dragons. I do not need an origin story for what D20s they bought at the gaming store for Strange Things season 4. I don't read Teen Titans Go, although this cover made me laugh so hard as Damien as an investigator putting out all the photos of Cyborg like doing the crime on the table in front of the other. It's cute. It's really funny. I wanted to read this. So this is that indie comic again, Terminus Vale. It's been around since 2022 and 2 issues came out this week and I checked and this cover artist is the interior artist. So the interior looks just like this cover, which I am into. I don't know how I figured that out. I think I went back to issue number 1, which is on Global Comics, but then issues 2 through 6 aren't. So I was like, oh, well, they look good. I don't know. I'm going to get in touch with the creator and see if maybe we could get a comp so we can talk about it and see, because a lot of you read physical comics, and if his physical comics are cool and he put all the money from a Kickstarter into making them, I want you to go and experience them. So I'll see if we can get a copy to read. I don't read Thundercats, even though it tempts me every month because I love the Thundercats, but I don't like Declan Shalvey's writing. But I am reading Thundercats Lost, which if you recall, I was obsessed with a couple of weeks ago. I did read Two-Face though. There's only one more issue after this one. This was okay. I don't know if I have a lot to say about it. Like, Two-Face is still in the struggle in his brain that the whole last issue is about. And so we get this villain who's kind of Two-Face-esque, but she throws dice. So she's six-sided as opposed to two-faced. And so she's having a throwdown with Two Faces, 6 sides having a throw down the Two Faces protege. And he doesn't know what to do about it. I don't really think this ultimately went anywhere, which is a shame because it was very stylish, very cool, some really cool concepts. I wish, honestly, that Christian Ward, who's the writer here, had drawn it. There's nothing wrong with Fabio Veras' drawing, and I love Ivan Placentia's colors here, but I just think that the kind of like weird vibe of this would have been sold better maybe by Christian Ward drawing himself, although he doesn't really do noir, and I get that this has a little bit of a noir feel, but I just haven't been able to get excited about it. Speaking of things I'm not excited about, I did not read Ultimate X-Men. I might catch up now that some of it's on Marvel Unlimited. I'm really excited to read X-O Manowar by Steve Orlando, but because IDW picked up the distribution of all of these Alien Comics Valiant Beyond books, then they've all gotten pushed back. So this was the original solicit date, but we don't know yet when it's going to arrive. It's going to arrive when they work that out. By the way, I really like that above the corner box, and I do love a corner box, they actually credit the cover artist, which is Ariella Viati, who has done tons of Manowar covers, if memory serves. But I just like that. I like credit the cover artist on the cover. I'm not reading The Walking Dead Deluxe, which is the colorized version of The Walking Dead. We only have a couple more. I did read West Coast Avengers by Jared Duggan, and this is a different artist than our normal artist. This is Ton Lima. Ton Lima, colored by Arthur Hesley, our normal colorist, was really good. There were some spectacular pages here. I will say it's colored a little gray. Like some of these faces, I get that there's the glow of lightning right in front of them, but it just went so gray. And then it wasn't just on this page, but it basically dug in, he just forces there a reason to have the main Avenger squad fight Tony squad. But the thing I liked about it was not the throwdowns necessarily, which kind of felt a little bit old hat, like stereotypical, like, okay, here's the tropey throwdowns we'll have. But it was interesting because Tony is like, how come if I had this plan while I was with your team in space, everybody would be like, great job, Tony. But as soon as I have a plan here on Earth, you're like, we don't trust you, Tony. And that extends to the fact that Ultron is on their team. So first of all, this art is really great. There's a lot of really good stuff about the ethics and the morality of Ultron. And it worked. I think having the teams fight each other was kind of cheap. And actually it starts kind of out of nowhere. It's like they're talking and then Blue Bolt fights Storm, but all of a sudden Spider-Woman's like, I guess I'm going to fight Scarlet Witch. I'm like, when did we decide that? I don't remember deciding that, but it was a fun issue. I don't think this is the best comic out there, but again, I will always endorse a more lighthearted Avengers comic at the same time of a more serious Avengers comic. So I'm happy that it exists. And now we come to X-Men, which I think is the final book of the poll. Positives and negatives. Positives, Jed McCrae's getting stronger and stronger in this team. I'm really liking this weird team of misfits: Cyclops, Beast, Magneto, Psylocke, Kid Omega, Temper, Magic, and Juggernaut. I like them together. I don't love Ryan Stegman's art, but I do think it was a little cleaner and not as twisty-bendy on this issue as it has been. The thing I will say, though, is they're basically flying around and looking around for this kid that's maybe a mutant or maybe not, that's lost from this town. We spent one issue focusing on her a few issues ago, but we also just did this flying around in the Outback looking for something 3 issues ago at the beginning of that arc that was like Shi'ar stuff and Alpha Flight. So it just felt kind of like, I appreciate the internal consistency, but I also was like, didn't we just do this? Like, I really thought I was reading the same issue a couple of times that I had already read. It's fine, I think, and we get a little bit more of the villains. I'm not super into the villains because this whole like, and we hate the mutants thing of the 3K. And they're led by Cassandra Nova. Not a spoiler, it's on the recap page. I just don't know if I care, but I do like all the time I spent with this team being such a weird assemblage of characters. And they also have new mutants with them too. It's clear that part of the remit of this era was make some more mutants in all of your books. I still like the ones in Extraordinary X-Men the best, but some of the ones in this book are interesting, and 2 of them get used in really interesting ways in this book, and it made me smile. So I think this is mildly okay. I still don't love it. I still have my problems with it. I do think this issue in particular was pretty repetitive to past issues, but it's an okay X-Men comic book. And right now I will take an okay X-Men comic book. I'll also take a drink because we're done. Okay. Now I've got to scroll back up and catch some comments. I think I was right around here with James Abel saying, looks like Nightmare on Elm Street was from Marvel at one point. Okay. So Earth Geomancer just got the Web of Spider-Man Omni. Is there an Omni containing the ASM content I should read in parallel? No, I could be wrong. But Web of Spider-Man starts at the end of Black Suit Saga because he's in the black suit on the cover of the first issue. So while you could get the complete Black Costume Saga omnibus, which kind of marries up right to the beginning of the Web of Spider-Man, that's not a complete, that's like an event omnibus in X-Men terms. It's not necessarily going to line up completely with the Marvel Masterworks line. So you're probably going to want to read some epics. You can just alternate month on month if you want to get the whole thing. And if you go to my Spider-Man guide, which is public, it is messy as hell and it intimidates even me. I'm not saying it's easy, but if you go in there and I abbreviate every book so I don't have to keep saying Web of Spider-Man over and over again. If you go and you do a search for WOSM, you'll find Web of Spider-Man 1 and it explains how to alternate every issue of Spider-Man ever. So you could do that. Lance is lots of people enjoying me going totally off on politics. People are saying that maybe I should just do a talk stream. Maybe I should do a talk stream. Maybe I should do it. Some unidentified Comics Pal loves JSA right now. So we clearly have to get on a channel together and argue about that. I do want to guest on Comics Pals because I want to hang out with the other 2 of them. I've never been on a stream with Marco, I don't think. And I think Marco and I would have fun conversations. And also I'd be with my great love, Sean. So Crushing Crisis versus Comics Pals on JSA. Yeah, I would love that. Yeah, to really analyze every comment's intricate, right? I should do a show after the show where I do a review of all of your comments. Okay. I will always show support and buy JSA, but this issue was ass. Okay, we have a whole range. We have a whole rainbow of reactions, and Comics Pals seems to want to get with me, and I kind of want to get with them. Can we get, are you gonna hang with me? Love, Robin. So don't go helplessly in love with me. Love, Robin. Body Talk, great album. Phone battery getting low. Oh no, Lance McNair. Kenneth Crowley, Jade was reintroduced in the Stargirl TV series, and I like the past JSA series by J.F. John, so I still haven't read it. I need to read it. But JSA can be great. It needs a good writer. And yeah, I think Lemire, here's what I think, truly giving Lemire some credit. I think he knows he's been weak on team books in the past, and I think he had an opening arc, and he was like, I'm going to make this arc super action-packed because I know that people sometimes feel like I don't bring it on team books. Oh, did my battery die already? I really think that's what happened. I do think that's what happened. So, and then I think he misjudged. Okay. Always an instigator. What's my take on the long-running accusation of the Wachowskis basically lifting the Matrix from Mars and Invisibles? Well, the Wachowskis are huge comic book fans. I don't think they lifted it fully from the Invisibles. I think absolutely the Invisibles was one of their inspirations, and that wouldn't surprise me to learn at all. But I think there's a difference between commonality in things and lifting. And I think sometimes those of us who are not in some of these creative industries need to remember that we're like, that's straight up lifted from, not necessarily. Sometimes things are just inspired, and sometimes there's the idea of the collective and conscious, and things are just similar. And that's just a thing that we need to sit with. That sometimes these things are similar to each other. So that's what I think about that. The Wachowski sisters used ideas and inspirations from various sources, including Invisibles and Ghost in the Shell. Look at everything from Tom King writes. He's admitted he watches 70s films and used them. Yeah, great point. Catabasis looks so fun. It reminds me of when I get into Aspen. Yeah, I think it has a similar vibe. One of my projects one year was reading all of the original Aspen comics. I didn't get super, super deep, but yeah, I did really enjoy that. Adam Messenger right there in indie books, although I'd probably be cool with stuff so Adam Messenger basically was responding to me reading No Man and saying he wouldn't have a problem with at all. I'm just going to talk while I search for another battery. I even took the time to change it before I started the stream today, and then it ran out. It must have been old battery because it ran out during the stream. Yeah, he's saying that he would totally be in for if there was that kind of indie art on an X-Men book. Super, super cool. Okay, but we got to get to the end of this. Adam Messenger wishes Ryan Brown would go back to God Hates Astronauts. I don't think I ever read that. Miles is quietly one of Marvel's best books. I would totally agree with that statement from an unidentified comic pal. Have they identified which comic pal it is? James Abel, Missing in the Moon. It's over. I wanted more. The series moved way too fast. I enjoyed it, but it needs to be longer. Yeah, and again, what I said is, I have a lot of patience for a series that, if they only have 4 issues in their indie series, move fast and break things. I have a lot of patience for that. Okay, this just in, Crazy Kid says they are jerks. I may have said that. Can neither confirm or deny. Moon Girl sells so well at the book fairs, though. I don't think it should. I don't think it's appropriate for children. I truly don't. I think it's a bad message. I think it consistently sends the message that if you are smart, you should not have the same rules as everybody else. I just think that's how it's always been. So interesting. Crisis, the Moon Girl's show is a lot better. Yeah, I was thinking maybe I should watch the show. James Abel, Pastime 1, baseball. Was he a vampire? I did not get that he was a vampire. Was he a vampire? The Field feels more like a prelude than issue number 1. I also got Field of Dreams. Yeah, it's obviously supposed to be Field of Dreams. Pastime was on my list to check out. The was pretty excited to check this out. Baseball of Vampires should be a supermassive black hole and be sparkly. Oh, set Superman, because that song, Supermassive Black, oh baby, I don't know the words. I love Muse though, because that was on the soundtrack of the Twilight soundtrack. I'd read a comic or manga on FFX's Blitzball. Yes, that would be cool. Hi, first time here. Oh, Grandmaster. Well, you picked quite a week to join us because I had a lot of opinions that were not great this week, but hopefully still entertaining. No Man was your indie pick of the week, but I'm super excited by Plague House. Dave Chisholm is one of my favorite artists right now. What's the future for Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide now that Jeppy, who was making them, is bankrupt? Oh, gosh. I don't know. Sounds like a thing we should ask Lars, formerly of Wizard Comics Magazine. James Chisholm says Scott Johnson is fantastic. Great issue. So excited. Yeah, it was really, really cool. It was just smart. It was smart. Poison 913, if being close to Ivy is changing Janet for HR into something else, why isn't Harley changed in the same way? James Abel asking the big questions. Grandmaster, I see people in the comments informed you of this, but I can't see the comments live when I'm in the middle of diatribing. I do them in between. New here, but see, we're a community. Everybody informed you. What's this? What's this? Anytime Kid Crisis is like, what's this? Like in that way, like kids like don't fully look at the thing and they'll know what it is if they just like look at it, but she doesn't. And so she goes, what's this? Anytime she does that, I'm just going to continue looking for this battery while I talk. Anytime she does that, I immediately break into the what's this song from what is that from? Nightmare Before Christmas. And so anytime anybody says what's this, one of my toxic traits is I just break into that song. God, can I get one functioning 9-volt battery in this room? Okay. No. Nobody said that. Nobody said that, Bunk. You have to go back and rewind and look at the moment of Christ. Or maybe you're just making fun of me for like saying that I didn't say that. I don't know. Okay. Psylocke number 6. I love Psylocke and Magic. Sister relationship. Yeah, that was really, really fun. Cruel Angel, Psylocke, X title is going to X title, bringing events and people into other books Marvel assumes you're reading. Hope there's an exception. Doesn't happen. Oh, so Cruel Angel did not like the thing that I liked about it. Issue number 1 of Populous is really disappointing. Okay, well, I feel vindicated for skipping it. Nick N, I was not going to get Psylocke because I'm not into Quanon, but synopsis intrigued me. Resurrection Man James Abel says, what if time, but a journey of life itself? This issue will leave you asking questions. Yeah, like, why did I read it? No, everybody but me liked it. I want to go back to Grandmaster, though, because Grandmaster was like waiting for me to talk to them and they didn't know. So look, I am not a big like speculation market person because I don't really care about singles. Like I read them digitally and then I get collected editions. So I don't know how much anything is worth. But I do think Overstreet Comic Book Guide is like one of the, it's been around forever. It's an institution. And I think we're going to be between Diamond's bankruptcy, between a lot of these comic book companies being somewhat insolvent, between potential tariff stuff that's about to happen. I think we're looking at like a lot of changing landscape of what we know to be good and true about how comic books are produced. And some of the institutions that we're used to are maybe going to be going away, and that's scary stuff. So pay for the stuff that you like, support them when you can, but sometimes these forces are bigger than me and you. Says Murph, I remember enjoying the original Resurrection Man series for a bit. Hopefully we get an Omni. I have that Omni perfectly mapped and we can vote for it on the DC Omnibus poll because I know exactly what it should look like. Name changes, love some Salmon Twitch. McFarlane does good stuff with Salmon Twitch. They were the best parts of the 20s and 30s of Spawn. Max Appelman's Spider-Boy. I love the series and I'll be sad it is ending soon. While I may not like Declan Shalving's writing on Thundercats, I do implore me to give Terminator a chance. They're all 1 and 2 parts and Father, but I hate his writing so much. I hated Mystique so much. But Adam, I trust you. If you tell me that Terminator might be good and I might like it, I will check it out. I always have room to love a new comic book. Fun fact, in his scripts for X-Men Man of War, he based the main character on the wrestler Drew McIntyre. Very cool. X-Men 14, getting Cassandra Nova flashback evil twin, fun issue. This was only around 20 pages. It felt like a 30-page issue. See, I do enjoy that when things feel fully stuffed. Foxhound, finished playing basketball. How was my week? My week was really busy. I was I'm just gonna keep talking and set up. Whatever. We're all friends here. If you see me wearing gym shorts under this lovely shirt, you're not gonna think any less of me. I had a good week. It was busy. I had to pull a couple of all-nighters, so I was really exhausted. But then this weekend, I got a chance to lay back and relax. I got to make my favorite jam this weekend. I love making jam, so that made me really. I should put this somewhere. I'm not going to knock it over. That's going to be a terrible idea. That made me really excited. So it was a good week. Lance Mingier, every storyteller pulled something from somewhere. Yeah, a stream analyzing the comments would be gold. Do I have something you most want for a Wonder Woman book? I think the hard thing is that Wonder Woman, it's kind of like I was saying, certain characters have certain tropes. It's so tempting to just be like, we're going to fuck with her origin, right? And it's so tempting to be like, we're going to play out these like bondage man world things. I just want some new ideas on Wonder Woman. I want people to lean into the fact that she's a warrior of love. And so I like G. Willow Wilson's run on her. I think that's who wrote her. Yeah. I think she like really, really got it. I think honestly, the Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad run was really interesting because it was like, what if she's has to go meet with other pantheons, right? I just think that you can only get so far with the stories we've seen with Wonder Woman so far, but much like X-Men, the market kind of expects you to tell those stories. So it's a catch-22. And also, I'm just suspicious of an all-male creative team. Look, there's tons of male writers who want to write Wonder Woman. I get it. She's amazing. She's my favorite character. But then, like, can we get a woman editing the book? Can we get maybe a woman drawing the book? I don't fundamentally believe in own voices. I don't think you can only have women drawing women and only have black people drawing black people. Like, I just don't believe in that. But I do think that if you're writing a story about the marquee female hero in comic books, it's good to make sure you have some outside input on your male ideas about her, which even Marlton, whatever the hell his name, even her originator did that with the women in his life. If I had the means and the money, Kane wonders, would I hire to write my dream comic? Well, we know that I want my hair to be drawn by Nicola Scott. I've been thinking, would I want to kickstart a comic or would I just want to pay for a comic? I don't love Kickstarter. Like, I've always been I love backing my Kickstarter, but I've always been a like pay my own way kind of person, which I'm very privileged and also very stubborn to be able to do. I'm still looking for a battery. And I don't know if I would ever do the Kickstarter thing because I don't like the idea of it being in someone else's hands. But I was thinking like, well, I could probably save up enough to pay the page rate of a really good like color letterer artist team and like so I'm like thinking about that. But I don't want you all to think that I do this because I like want to be a comic book person. It's just that I do love stories and I love the construction of stories, and I think it would be fun to do a comic one time. Like Adam Reck, who's a great artist, who's one of the co-hosts of Battle of the Atom, he very occasionally does a full comic book. I remember buying one from him some Gumroad or something like 2 or 3 years ago, and I think that's cool. I think it's fun to just try making something sometime. One Wheelchair X is here, just taking a break from editing a video. Good, because you need more videos in your channels to join the live. I hope everyone is well and liked X-Men. I think Jed has hit his stride with these characters and their dynamics, and Psylocke is getting stronger every issue, and I really appreciate that Wong is doing the work to keep the X-Men connected. Better crossover than Raid on Greymaken already. Totally agree. Logan Wade, seeing as I'm in charge of mapping for the most wanted poll, then I ask you. Yes, well, it's gonna No, we're not. No, Don McGregor won't be on it. Early Years 2 will be on it. Here's the thing. The golden rule on these polls, I wonder, can I just I need to go get this battery. The golden rule on these polls is don't double dip the same comics in 2 different poll options because it will split the vote unless it's X-Men, right? X-Men people, there were like 2 books with the same contents in the top 20 last year. So for Black Panther, most people have Early Years 1, and so most people want the book that will come after that. We could put in parentheses has Don McGregor material, but the easiest, much like I'm rooting for every comic book, on the poll, I'm rooting for everything to get voted on. And so in order for it to get voted on, we need to title it in a way that's attractive to people to vote on it. And the way to make it attractive to the most people that will vote for it is to make it be an obvious book. Now, Marvel might call it something different because Marvel's not into number 2s right now. But for the purposes of the poll and finding the option on the poll, it's better if we name it the thing that everybody's expecting. All right, I'm going to leave the room for 1 minute. I'm not going to run as far as I ran, because I just want to see if I have a 9-volt battery somewhere, because I don't know if I can play the song without a 9-volt battery. It's on me. I found these old batteries. Oh boy. There's so many guitars in this room, you don't even know. I found these old, and now you get to see me go through shit that's in my closet for 5 minutes. I found this older battery, and I was like, oh, this still has a charge. And so I put it in. What are these? No. So I put it into I put it in to the guitar, and the guitar turned on. So I was like, great. Even if that battery's old, surely it will last for like an hour. And then, okay. Here we go. We might have one. We might have a solution. So anyway, I don't think I am on another stream this week. I love how this still went over 3 hours, even though it was such a short week. But that's okay. I knew that I was going along on things. Yes, this battery worked. Yes. Okay, so I am going to be on Omnidog's Vault on Tuesday night for our monthly Jammin' on Comics with Freddie, which is really just a hangout. It's a hangout. I have time to read all the chats because I'm on there with my 2 friends, and I don't have to be the sole talker. I think we're maybe going to talk about obscure characters. I don't know. TBD. And then I might be doing another secret stream later this week. So if you have not already turned on notifications, beautiful, then you need to turn on notifications so you will know if I do a secret stream. I mean, it's not a huge secret because many of you saw it. It was, oh, now I'm too high. It was me going through the DCBS catalog, which I might do again when the new one hits later this week, and just talking about what I'm going to pre-order. Okay. So that might happen. And otherwise, Crushing Crisis. There's a lot of stuff happening in Crushing Crisis. I'm going to try to get another guide out this week. I'm already working on the new releases posts for next week's, because that's how it goes. I have to be a week ahead at all times. And that's what's going on. So I'm going to play you a song. Do I read any prose novels? Last question of the day. And again, I'm so sorry. I know I didn't get to every question. It's hard when you're self-producing this show to do all these things at once. But I always go through and look at them afterwards, and I'll try. If you come back to the comments of the video later this week, you might find that I've answered some of the questions there. And also, I do put chapter marks in. So if you've only caught a little bit of this and then you want to go back and like read me reading or talking about certain comic books, I usually within the next 24 hours will have all of the chapter marks in. Okay, but back to your question. I love prose, and I was one of those kids that read prose all the time. And I just find that I don't have the time for it now. And I need to make the time, but this whole operation takes so much time and so much effort. So sometimes it just feels like how could I possibly have time to read prose? But I was in the middle of reading The Dispossessed by Ursula Le Guin last year. And I loved it so much that I kept reading it slower and slower and slower because I was so obsessed with it, which is kind of like weird. So I really want to finish The Dispossessed. I wound up buying the complete works of Ursula Le Guin. So I'd like to read all those. And I really need to read, what is it called? Dayspring, which is Anthony Oliveira's novel, which I actually get it imported because nobody's printing it in New Zealand and Australia. Would have had a tariff on that. And so no, that's a joke. But I really want to read that. And it's about like heaven and hell, Jesus-y stuff, which I love. So I do want to get back to reading prose this year. I do. Okay. I'm going to play a song now. So I'm not going to get to see your comments from here on out, but I do go and see them as soon as the song is over. We've just established that I can no longer pay attention to playing music if I'm trying to read at the same time. You've heard me talk a lot about how once things are a certain way, I want them to stay that way. The status quo, right? And so I really love a status quo. I like a status quo in a comic book. Once the run gets to a good part that has a part of the run that I love, let's just keep doing it. And I'm the same way in life. I'm the same way with relationships. I want to get to a thing that I like, a routine that I like, and I want to stay there. So I wrote this song called Status Quo. And I wrote it very, very inspired by Sam Cooke and by Motown, because I love Sam Cooke and I love Motown. And I originally didn't think that I was going to read it. I didn't think I was going to sing it. I wrote it for my co-writer and my best friend, Gina, who was in the band with me. And I thought she was going to sing it. And it was called, originally my code name for it was like Shoop Blues, because I thought it had a very shoop, 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 shoo, shoop kind of thing to it. And then over time, I just discovered it was so personal to me because it was about my opinions on the status quo that it became a song that was my song. So now I play it. It usually has a falsetto part that I think it's still too early in the day for me to do. It goes, hey, yeah, I don't think we're going to get there. So I might do the non-falsetto version, but this is called Status Quo. And I don't think I've ever recorded it ever before. So here we go. Thanks so much. You've been wonderful. I've been Crisis. I'll say goodbye again afterwards, but your support, and there are a ton of you on the stream and so many comments. It really matters to me. This is expensive to do in money and in time. And I do it because I get to come on and have these conversations about comics with all of you. And it really helps me that you like, it really helps that you subscribe. It really helps me if you share with one of your personal comic pals, not one of the 4 comic pals. They know who I am already. And tell them, hey, there's this cool book, Catabasis, this weird person, Crisis, keeps screaming about how cool it is. That helps me, and it helps me make this more worthwhile to do. So I'm definitely doing this for the rest of this month of April. I don't know if it's going to keep happening in May. It has to do with how much of you show up, how much of you like the video. If we keep growing, if it starts shrinking, then it's not going to keep happening. So it is very much happening because of you. And this, because I like what? A status quo. And this is called Status Quo. When things were good, I wanted them to get better. But when they were better, I realized that nothing good ever lasts forever. Now I'm wishing on the status quo. And I just want you to know that you can't stay the same as you are today. I don't want you any other way. Don't change your face for me. Don't change your name. Please stay the same, the same, the same. Don't you ever change. buy you diamonds. I can take you for a ride. I can give you any material thing, babe. I can't buy us more time. Gotta love you the best that I can today. 'Cause love sometimes dies, love sometimes fades away, and you can't stay the same as you are today. I don't want you any other way. Don't change your face for me. Don't change your name. Please say the same, the same, the same. Don't you ever change. See it in your eyes. See it in your eyes. They tell me all that I need to know. Our love is young compared to an ocean. And when we're gone from this world, the tide will still ebb and flow. There'll be no more sign of our devotion. Our love is real, but our love is fragile. It will crumble to dust while the mountains stand and smile. So I'm done wasting time on regrets of what could have been. Gonna love you in this moment. I'm gonna love you again and again, and you can stay the same as you are today. I don't want you any other way. Don't change your face for me. Never change your name. Please say the same, the same, the same. Please say the same, the same, the same. Please say the same, the same. Don't you ever change. Don't change me. That's called Status Quo. I've been Krisis. Please treat yourself well and treat other people well in the world. Everybody's deserving of that. People have rights. Trans rights are human rights. So are women's rights. So are the rights of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Let's treat everybody the way that we want to be treated and try to make some good in the world, because there are some people making some not so good in the world right now, but we have the power to influence the things we can influence. So hopefully I was a good influence on you this week, and hopefully you go out there and are a good influence on other people in the future. That's it for me. And what did I say last week? I had such a good thing last week. Don't have a crisis this week, unless, of course, it's me.